9:30, when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Hello there, a very good morning to you. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
It's Tuesday, 26th of March. You're very, very welcome. The UK could be set to formally declare China a threat to national security. 2 individuals and 1 company is facing sanctions after the data of 40 million Britons was leaked.
Yes, the government is using tough rhetoric on Beijing at last, but there are plenty of MPs who would like them to go much, much further. Find out more with me very soon.
But critics, including Conservative MP Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, say the sanctions just don't go far enough.
I welcome these 2 sanctions from the government. It is a little bit, this statement, like an elephant giving birth to a mouse.
This morning, the Education Secretary joins us to announce tens of thousands of new school spaces for children with special needs.
And in the sport this morning, huge game for Wales tonight in Cardiff. If they beat Poland, they make it to the Euros. England play Belgium as Scotland take on Northern Ireland in friendlies. And Andy Murray's gone and ruptured his talofibular ligament, which, by the way, is his ankle, and could now struggle to get to Wimbledon for the final time.
Morning. This week's Unsettled theme continues today. Most of us will see some rain at some point. There will also be a bit of hill snow over the high ground of Scotland. I'll have more details shortly.
China hitting the news today in the front pages of many of the newspapers. It could be declared a national security threat after the Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowden accused it of, I don't know what that means. Suddenly the words just changed in front of my eyes. What did that mean? Anyway, nobody seems to like it. Here's what Dowden had to say.
We want now to be as open as possible with the House and with the British public, because part of our defence is calling out this behaviour. This is the latest in a clear pattern of hostile activity originating in China, including the targeting of democratic institutions and parliamentarians in the United Kingdom and beyond.
Well, Lord Cameron released a statement on X saying this last night.
Attacks on our democracy are unacceptable. Yet that is what organisations backed by China have done. Today, we are publicly calling them out, and we've taken action. We've summoned the Chinese ambassador, and we are putting sanctions, travel bans, asset freezes on the individuals and the group responsible.
Fascinating. So Cameron speaks in such a way that we need subtitles under his name there.
No,
Why
it's
is
because
that?
on social media, when people post things on, if they're on a train or in public, they can just watch the
Words.
subtitles, without having the sound on. I do that quite a lot.
Do they do it with us?
Probably. Yeah, they do, I think, on some of the Instagram grabs they do of our chats in the morning.
Let's go to our political correspondent, Olivia Utley, on this one. So is this China or China's mates, or where's all this emanating from, and how serious is it?
Well, it's pretty serious. The Chinese government had access to data of about 40 million UK voters for over a year between August 2021 and when the breach was discovered in October 2022. What's more, there was cyber tracking software found linked to 43 different parliamentary email accounts, including the accounts of a number of hawkish China skeptic MPs. So essentially, China was spying on a group of MPs. Now, the government is sounding like they're going to be quite tough on this. They've talked about sanctions for China as a result of this. They've said that it is unacceptable. They said that it amounts to malicious behaviour. But there are plenty of MPs, including Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, former leader of the party, who we heard from just then, who say that it's just not enough. These MPs have been warning about the risk from China for a long time now, and they say that the government must go much, much further. One thing that they're asking the government to do is to officially designate China as a threat. Now, that's something that so far the UK government has held off doing. It's something that actually Liz Truss said that she would like to see done if she were made PM. But of course, she never got the chance in her 6 weeks in office. If China were officially labelled a threat by the government of the United Kingdom, it would obviously hugely interfere with our trade with China and could make things politically very, very difficult. But there are plenty of Conservative MPs, including actually Robert Jenrick, the former immigration minister and close friend of Rishi Sunak, who thinks that the time has come to make that decision. The golden era of relationships between the UK and China, something that George Osborne and David Cameron talked a lot about in those coalition years, has very much come to an end.
Cabinet splits, though, not necessarily Rishi Sunak's forte, and so far he has resisted calls for a very long time to declare China a threat. He's preferred to use this very strange phrase of epoch-defining challenge. Do you think he's going to finally toughen up his language, even if he's not going to toughen up the sanctions?
he might decide that now is the moment to toughen up the language, because, of course, that would be easier than toughening up the sanctions on China. We know that Rishi Sunak is in an incredibly precarious situation at the moment. It's thought that there are up to about 30 Conservative MPs who might have sent in a letter of no confidence in him to Graham Brady. He will be worried that these China hawks on the backbenches, and some in the cabinet as well, they're an organised group, and they could pose him a lot of difficulties unless he shows that he is listening to what they're saying. It could be that he decides now that the moment has come to declare China a threat officially, even if he doesn't back up that language with actions. Would that be enough for this group of Conservative MPs? It's not clear, but it would be a big step in the right direction.
OK, thank you very much, Olivia.
MPs have been urged to consider compensation for the women affected by state pension changes. In an open letter to the House of Commons, leader Penny Mordaunt.
That's after a petition calling for compensation was signed by more than 30,000 people.
Former chair of the WASPI campaign group, Hilary Simpson, joins us now. Hilary, good morning to you. How bad are things, Hilary, and do you think people are listening to you?
Well, judging by the discussion in Parliament yesterday, actually, I'd say everybody is listening to us, except possibly the Minister for Work and Pensions. We have an enormous groundswell of support from backbenchers and from people generally. That's been my experience over the last few days, but it's quite difficult to cut through to the government on this issue at the moment.
It's been a long-running battle. Just bring us up to date on your own story when you realised that you had been effectively shortchanged and not made aware of those changes, and you know how hopeful you are that finally, as you say, there seems to be this momentum that there might be some compensation for you.
Well, my story is pretty typical. It's not particularly exciting. I was working in local government. It was at the time of the financial crash around 2008-9. Local government was entering a period of austerity, much like it is at the moment. And lots of us working in local government were offered early retirement packages. I looked at what I was offered and thought it was quite a good deal. I was 55 at the time and assumed, because I'd never been notified otherwise, that I would get my state pension from 60. So in the spirit of good financial planning, I looked at the lump sum I would get. I made it last for the 5 years, as it were, until I would get my state pension at 60. It was only after I'd signed the deal that I found out that I wouldn't actually get that state pension till 63. And then, of course, there was a second wave of changes which accelerated it very quickly with virtually no notice from 63 to I eventually got mine at 65 and a half. As I said, not an exciting story, but absolutely typical of the way that the changes were communicated in such a way that nobody had any opportunity to plan or to make proper preparations.
Well, you say not an exciting story, but I would have thought a frightening story to go 2.5 years without any recompense, you know, without money sitting there in the bank for you to go along. Well, how did you get through those? How did you get through those couple of years?
Well, the money that I had expected to sort of dole out and make last for 5 years ended up covering 10.5 years. So I had a workplace pension as well, but the top up was considerably diluted, let's put it that way. There are a lot of people who've had it a lot worse than me. I was lucky enough to have a workplace pension that was reasonably generous, but of course, a lot of women, for all kinds of reasons, didn't have that. And we all know that women get a raw deal from workplace pensions anyway. Many of them have spent a high proportion of their time in work working part-time while they've got small children or other caring responsibilities. At the time when most of us entered the workforce, we didn't always have access to workplace pensions. I mean, you know, that was a relatively recent innovation. So.
Well, the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman took what he described as rare but necessary action to intervene and actually ask Parliament to debate and to vote on how these pension changes were communicated. Do you think you will see a decent chunk of compensation, and what sort of figure have you got in mind?
Well, there are two figures being bandied about at the moment. The one the Ombudsman is recommending is what he calls level 4, which ranges from £1,000 to just under £3,000. What was actually recommended by a cross-party group of MPs, the all-party political group on this issue, was what the Ombudsman calls level 6. And level 6 is £10,000 or more. And the two main WASPy campaign groups, of which I'm one, chair of one, would like to see that higher level of £10,000 plus.
To you. I really hope that you manage to get the compensation you quite clearly deserve. Keep us posted on your campaign, and thanks very much for telling us your story this morning.
But you know, Hilary, a lot of people they won't. This won't affect them. They're not interested in you because they're not your age, and this hasn't happened to them. And when it does affect them, when they get to a certain age, what age have you to be before you get your pension now as a woman?
67, I think it's gone up to now.
Right, 67.
It can rise again, of course, for everybody. I mean, men and women now do get the same pension age.
Yeah. But you're a former civil servant. I mean, you must know the mood, whatever is going on in departments and whatever. This is all part of what I would put it as theft. This is theft. It's as if someone's gone up to your purse and taken this money out, money that you were relying on. And it's the same for all the hundreds of thousands of people who are experiencing retrospective tax, which a lot of people don't care about loan charge or IR35 until it hits them. And that is the thing. What is going on? What is the mood in government at the minute for clawing back money? We hear about them spending money, but what about the secretive way instigated by people like George Osborne of getting money back?
I thought someone would mention George Osborne. He came up in Parliament yesterday with his famous quote about raising women's state pension age being the easiest money that his government had ever made. And that quote will haunt him forevermore, I'm fairly sure of that. What worries me, actually, is the government's poor record on implementing compensation. Because if you look at what's happened to the Post Office Horizon people, if you look at what's happened to the contaminated blood victims, to the Windrush victims, it's not a good story. The Equitable Life victims, in all those groups, there are still people waiting for compensation that they've been promised. And to be honest, that's the bit that worries me, that even if a compensation package is agreed, over 100 WASPy women are dying every day while this drags on.
Yeah.
So, time is of the essence, as they say.
Well, Hilary, good luck to you. You have our interest and support in all of this. Well, you've got mine anyway, having been a victim of theft from the Inland Revenue as well. But it's all happening out there. Hilary's story, your views on it, you're very welcome to let us know this morning. As I say, you won't really care until it affects you. Thank you very much indeed, Hilary Simpson.
People have got more imagination than that. I can see how bad that is without having been affected myself. Charity Age UK are campaigning to ensure elderly people who don't use the internet are not left behind in the digital age when it comes to banking, medical care and paying bills.
GB News Yorkshire and Humber reporter Anna Riley has been investigating.
Offline and overlooked. That's what Age UK say millions of British pensioners are. Why? Because they cannot or won't access the internet. It's leading to digital exclusion. So the charity's campaigning for public services like banks, utilities and even the NHS to maintain a more human approach.
Everything's online. People assume you've got a smartphone with a mobile number and an email, and without that you don't exist in this world anymore. We've got to try and get the government to see that it's so important to make people feel that they belong, because there's a feeling that the older generation just feel that they're forgotten, they're in the way, and we already know that anyway, but it's just another reason for them to feel that they're not wanted. They'll just accept it and they'll say, well, that's it, I can't do it anymore. And that's it, whereas other people would be really kicking and screaming. So we need to be the voice for older people.
Despite digital technology playing an increasing role in our lives, around 1 in 5 over 65s in the UK don't use the internet. Thornycroft Centre in Pontefract, West Yorkshire, provides a space for this age group to socialise and get help to go online.
I'm not that good with mobiles, so when you mention anything about online, I ain't a clue what you're talking about.
Your brain's not up to all these fancy things, and not only that, when you're online, you're getting these people, you have to be very careful in case you're scammed.
They're not considering old people who feel left behind. I have to ask my grandson, who's 14-year-old, to do things for me.
They expect you to know what you're doing, and or they want to do updates. And you think, what the blazes is it for?
The closure of thousands of banks is also detrimental to the older generation.
A lot of our members what come, they tend to use cash. They don't like to use bank cards. I think a lot of it's trust or the lack of knowledge. They don't understand how it works. I think they're very vulnerable as well with online. It's really important that they're aware how to use it and how to use it safely.
So, in an online era, it's still crucial for many to have an offline option. Anna Riley, GB News.
OK, other stories making the news this morning. The UN Security Council is calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza for the first time since the war began. The US abstained from the vote in a move that signals weakening relations with Israel. Following the news, Israel was quick to cancel a visit to Washington. It comes as the UK has delivered its first aid package to Palestinians since the war broke out.
Donald Trump will face trial next month in the first ever criminal trial of a former or current US president. In a win for Mr. Trump, he was granted a 10-day extension to pay his fine, which was also reduced from £360 million to 140. Republicans' overseas spokesperson Jennifer Ewing spoken to GB News on the matter.
With each one, Trump's numbers went up, right? So people do not care about this. They know that Donald Trump, especially in this case, has been one of the most well-known real estate moguls in New York City for half a century. Nothing like this has ever been brought up. He ran for president, as we know. Nothing like it was brought up during his presidency. And so now when he decides to run again, this is coming out.
Veterans Minister Johnny Mercer has been given 10 days to name the whistleblowers who informed him about alleged murders by the SAS in Afghanistan or face being jailed. The chairman of the Afghanistan Inquiry, Sir Charles Haddon-Cave, told Mr Mercer his decision to refuse to answer questions at a public inquiry were disappointing, surprising and completely unacceptable.
A convoy of over 100 tractors made its way through Westminster on Monday in protest of what Save British Farming say is a lack of support for UK food production. The action follows months of protests from EU farmers amid the growing threat of food security facing Europe.
Well, so here we are on Tuesday, and how would you, if you were licking your finger and putting it out your car window, how would you...
It was mild, milder start than the day before. It was about 9 degrees as I got in the car, so...
But it's brighter.
Is it getting brighter? Summer is coming, hence the yellow.
Yes.
I'm a little Easter chick this morning.
I sort of hold back in the morning before coming in. Instead of coming in at my normal 3 a.m, I just sometimes hold back to see the sun coming up, or the sky at least brightening,
cracking,
and it's doing that certainly by 5 o'clock. It's doing that.
There's
anyway,
so many early birds though that join us in the morning, whether you're on a night shift like we do, sort of kind of do, don't we? Whether you're getting up early to go to work. Tell us what you're doing, why you're up at these crazy times as well, looking at the sky like
See,
that.
when I come into work in the morning, I look and I see all these cars around London. Where are they going? What are they doing?
Up to no good. That's what I think most of the time.
Alex Burkle, here he is with the weather forecast.
a brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There will be some dry weather around today, but also a swathe of rain pushing its way northwards. And this morning we do have some outbreaks of showery rain across parts of Scotland with a bit of sleet or snow over the higher ground. The brightest weather this morning will be across parts of northern England, the Midlands and into East Anglia. But here it is going to turn cloudier as we go through the day, with a bit of rain pushing in as this swathe of rain across southern parts gradually makes its way northwards as we go through the day. Also some outbreaks of rain across parts of Northern Ireland, and temperatures for many of us will be around or a little bit below average for the time of year, especially across parts of Scotland. A bit of a chilly feel here. As we go through the end of the day, the wet weather across much of England will feed further northwards, so a pretty wet end to the day across northern England, and then a wet night for much of Scotland. And as that rain hits the high ground over the Highlands, the Grampians, we are likely to see some further hill snow. Something a bit clearer following in behind, so temperatures taking a bit of a dip, many places falling to low to mid single figures. But quite a few places waking up to a bright start on Wednesday, particularly across central parts of England. However, towards western areas, southwestern parts, here we will have some heavy blustery showers. Could have a bit of thunder mixed in with these as they gradually make their way northeastwards. Temperatures again around average for the time of year, perhaps a little bit below, but it is going to be a touch milder than today for many of us, albeit quite blustery at times. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Box Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We'll give you a warm feeling inside and outside now with our spring giveaway competition, and time is running out as we approach Friday when it ends. Well, it ends for this month.
Yes, and there's lots up for grabs this time. Shopping gadgets, a shopping spree, and of course, lots of cash. Here are all the details of how you can get involved.
It's the final week to see how you could win big. You could win an amazing £12,345 in tax-free cash that you could spend however you like. Plus, there's a further £500 of shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. We'll also give you a gadget package to use in your garden this spring. That includes a games console, a pizza oven and a portable smart speaker, so you can listen to GB News on the go. You have to hurry, as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Good luck, good luck. Paul Coit now with the sport, and it was a pretty boring night yesterday, wasn't it? What
might be for you. I had a fantastic evening.
Had you?
Oh, yeah.
Did you find your dog's knee?
You know what? It's funny you should say that.
Yes.
Because I was looking at Nellie very carefully, and I did the same with Dudley when we were out for a walk, because I was thinking, where's the knee, where's the leg? And yes, I did spot it. But it's still not the knee in the old style of knee or elbow.
Paul and I were talking yesterday. My dog gets an injection in her front knee, but he says she hasn't got a knee. It's an elbow. So it's but she walks at her elbows.
Yeah, but what about the front legs?
Well, the front one, and I followed that up because they've got the little bit there with the paw is.
Your ankle.
And then that's well, but they're more like little hands, though, aren't they? They're not like. I can't really see them as four legs. It's like an arm stroke leg, the front one, which is a bit more. I'm really making him more of a fool of myself than I even was yesterday.
Okay. It's a good job you're not the vet. Inject my ankle here, inject my knee.
I'll be starring in the new series of Super Vet, by the way, next week.
Okay.
Let's do some sport. Huge game for Wales. Taking on Poland. If they win, they get to the Euros. England play. They're playing Belgium tonight, and Andy Murray's ankle is all over the place. We're a little worried about that. His knee's fine.
Okay. All to come after the break.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel. See, England are playing in a friendly tonight, and I'm just talking to Paul about it here, and they're coming out in the second half without any names on the back of their shirts. And all of this is about the sentiment of dementia or Alzheimer's, which, fine. But every social issue or medical issue in the world is not my problem as a football supporter. Go away, leave us alone, let us enjoy the game, stop ramming social messages down our throats.
It's very interesting you say that. You know what? I'm gonna sit on the fence with this because I think it's really important. I think dementia is something that people should be talking about, and I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying, but I also think it's quite a clever way of doing it. But I think the idea is that you see the names in the first half as well. It helps everybody. So then you can learn who everybody is. I mean, they're all household names anyway. But then the names are taken off their shirts. And that is because it's because of memory and people forget. OK. And that's what it's all about.
That's when commentators had to be commentators, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's when you'd really have to know. I mean, I knew Martin Peters very well. And I remember it was one of the saddest things I ever remember was talking to Martin, and I remember he'd start repeating himself, and this is when we were doing stuff at Spurs, and he'd repeat, and then we'd think, is Martin OK? Then I didn't see him for quite a long time, and I haven't told anybody this, and he came back to Tottenham, and he was there for a West Ham game, and this is when dementia had really started kicking in with poor Martin. And I said, well, how are you? How are you doing? And he said, people think there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
And I said, well, really? He said, you know, they're stopping me working. They think there's something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm absolutely fine. But we knew very well
there was
that
something wrong with him.
It was taking hold, and of course that ended up taking his life. And it's happened to so many footballers. So I think it's good they're doing it with football. I see what you're saying.
I think football would be better off saying there is a distinct link, or we're carrying out more and more studies to find out if there is a link between heading a football and getting dementia.
I agree.
I think that would be better.
But what is the main problem though with taking the names off? Because you wouldn't see them?
No, it's just look. If it's not this, I have to have a 2-minute silence on Saturday or something else, and I think go away, leave me alone.
Give me my
football. Right, my friend.
Biggest game.
Wales tonight.
Yeah,
Wales.
this is huge.
How good are Poland, incidentally?
Poland are OK. They didn't qualify for the Euros. Obviously, this is the reason they're in the playoffs. I mean, the right way they got into the playoff was sort of through the back door, through how they did in the Nations League. So it was Albania got through ahead of them before, and who else? There was the Czech Republic as well. Robert Lewandowski is the big star, which is the great goal scorer, you know, one of the greatest goal scorers there's ever been, playing for Poland, but he is knocking on a bit now. 68 years old, he's going to be playing for Poland, so he is knocking on. He's been around for a while, but obviously very dangerous, whereas Wales are very, obviously it's post-Gareth Bale now, they're a very young side, so
Come on.
I think Wales would be OK. The fact that it's in Cardiff, I think, is really important. And if they really go for them, I think Cardiff will get through. I was a bit more worried the other day, and I've thought a little more, and I think It's going to be close, but I really think Wales will do it. It's
Fingers
a huge
crossed.
game, but if they win, they're in the Euros, which is terrific.
Andy Murray has a huge ankle. What's wrong with it?
Oh, goodness me, yeah. Do you remember we looked at that yesterday? I think we've got the footage again just so we can see how bad it was. So Andy Murray playing in the Miami Open yesterday. Thomas Machak of the Czech Republic. So there we are, serving now. I don't know whether we could see the twist. There we are. There's... Oh, my goodness. I'm in all sorts of pain. We were thinking, well, it looks terrible, but then he continued to play on. So I think, well, maybe it wasn't too bad. And it turned out he tore 2 ligaments in his ankle, which is a full rupture of the talofibular ligament, which I can tell you is bad.
Easy for you to say. Have you done it?
Does a dog have one of those?
Dog has 2 of those, just around that area. But it looks like 12 weeks out. So I've been trying to do the math.
Right.
To do the math, so I hate when people say do the math.
Yeah, that's American.
I'm trying to do the math. And it looks like the French Open, which is at the end of May, he should
just
be
before
around
Wimbledon.
there and before Wimbledon. And that's 12 weeks is usually the worst
But
scenario.
that's just getting your ankle back. You've then got to get your fitness
Of course,
back.
yeah.
So I don't know now.
It's Andy
Wimbledon.
Murray, though, isn't it? It's Andy Murray. The man's a machine.
He is.
He could probably be OK in a
but it's
week.
worrying.
But as long as he's OK, that's the main thing. Wimbledon and then the Olympics. And he's only said he'll only play in the Olympics if he thinks he can win a medal.
OK. Right, my friend. See you again 7:20.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about... there's a lot of controversy with the England football kit that they're wearing at the moment. Germany...
Germans now as well.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that next time round. Thank you very much indeed.
Stay with us. Coming up, we're going to be taking a look at what's making the news this morning. We've got Alex Armstrong and Claire Muldoon for that. And then after that, we have the Education Secretary on talking about special educational needs. So stay tuned our way.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Can you just let us know if there have been people getting into contact with you as a local councillor about how they feel about every lamppost, which is supposed to be public, neutral territory, being covered in these flags? Has it made some of your constituents nervous to walk the streets?
It's a complete range of people, including people who are from the Bangladeshi Muslim community who support the endeavours of Gaza, of what is going on, and are hostile to the actions of the Israeli government, but feel that they shouldn't have these flags on streets. So if you walk down some of the streets, it doesn't look like a London borough. It looks almost like what you would imagine in Ceausescu's Romania, with flags on every street lamp.
Well, Peter, can you let us know what it's like in the council and their activities in Tower Hamlets? How much time, for example, has been spent discussing issues relating to what's happening in the Middle East? Has it dominated quite a lot of time?
No. Let's be absolutely fair to the mayor and the administration. There's a heck of a lot to do in this council. We have extremes of deprivation and, of course, wealth because of the Canary Wharf City Fringe. We have huge problems on the council. And to be fair, the council spends its time doing council matters. And they said initially, in fact, absolutely carefully at council meetings, we can't interfere with foreign policy, but we got a lot to do on national policy and local policy. Let's concentrate on that.
So there hasn't been too much pressure that you can see from people living in the borough for the council to take a stance?
Members of the council and the administration have put their support. As I've said, we're talking of free speech. They're entitled to do that, but it's what happens where the council is responding to absolutely everybody, all 320,000 people who live in our borough.
Claire Muldoon and Alex Armstrong now, and they're going through stories that are getting you all talking today. And the thing, guys, that is getting everybody talking, certainly getting the newspapers talking, is what is China up to? A national security threat or not? UK and the US seem to think so, Claire.
Well, it definitely is. I mean, since back in the day when China introduced Huawei into the country and they were building up and moving in all the infrastructure of the tech infrastructure into the country, and everyone knew that there would be a cyber attack or something to do with that. Everyone was like, oh, no, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. And Theresa May was the one that said, no, we're going to halt this, we're going to stop this. And look what's happened. Oliver Dowden yesterday addressed the Commons and he said that we are at grave risk of some attacks coming. And I think he's right, he really is. But we've got this
Right. If you don't
balance.
do business with China, who are you going to do business with? North Korea?
That's the thing, Eamonn. Our business was worth £100.9 billion to the coffers of this country in the last 12 months. It's a major trader for export and import for us, our 5th largest partner.
Yeah.
You know, and all the infrastructure that they've brought into the country in terms of all the cash they've brought in, for the property they've brought in.
Yeah, I mean, everyone who watches this show, if you've ever seen me on here, knows I'm not a huge fan of David Cameron. And that's, I mean, this is the man out doing the rounds today about China. And Cameron is the guy that was, I mean, while he was Prime Minister, cozied up to China hugely.
Brought the president to the pub.
The pints, let's not forget.
Golden era.
2.2 billion worth of Chinese investment buying up London properties. And that's just, I mean, it's the tip of the iceberg. It goes down. I mean, he's also helped drum up foreign investment for China and their Indo-Pacific Railway, you know, the Chinese belt they're building, which there's a lot of criticism of. So I do feel it's a little difficult to stomach hearing it from Cameron today, seeing is that, you know, if you're saying now they're a threat, well, you're the guy that invited them in the front door here and you welcome them with open arms. So I don't know whether he's the man to be delivering this message, frankly.
Well, and just on that, I mean, there are questions about delivering this message. You know, he addressed the 1922 committee of Tory MPs last night, but nothing for the Lib Dems or for Labour, and they were really, really annoyed about this. They said, given this is unprecedented, you're saying this is a national security risk, and we're not being briefed by the Foreign Secretary.
Yeah, exactly. He's, you know, his silence is deafening. You know, but the other thing that I'm concerned about is if you go to China, you cannot use WhatsApp. You can't use any of the normal apps that we have because it's all state control. Right? But their TikTok app is so popular. There's massive amounts of information that's been given to children on TikTok as an app.
Let me ask you, right, so you're sitting here as a political commentator today and you're speaking out against the Chinese state. Now, if you had a holiday planned to China, to Beijing or whatever it is, would you not be worried that somebody at an airport is going to flag up your name?
Of course.
Yeah?
Well, I went through Hong Kong recently, and I don't know whether I've always been singing China's praises, but at the same time, I mean, I'm critical of this government as much as I am any other government because they're all doing their own different thing, right? But at the end of the day, China is a big threat in terms of their dominance in the world, and the West should be worried about that if we want to maintain Western supremacy over the world, which we do have through our trading power. China is middle class are quickly becoming the new consumers. They're buying and buying and buying. So you're seeing the shift from China manufacturing to India now, and so the Chinese middle class are becoming the new consumers, and there's billions of them, you know. So a really powerful up-and-coming country that we maybe have underestimated for a very long time. It's very interesting.
Let's talk about Trump. Have we underestimated him? He's managed to have his bond reduced and a bit longer to try and find this money, and is due to face trial for the first time, a former president facing a criminal trial next week. He's on the front of a lot of the papers. I'm just looking across. I can see him on The Guardian and on the FT, Alex.
Yes. So, I mean, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on here. So, obviously, there's two things to say. First of all, he was in trial yesterday for a slightly different reason. So, he was in about this hush money. I think it was with Stormy Daniels. So he's saying he will testify, so that will be rather explosive because he said he's done nothing wrong. But at the same time, he also had some good news yesterday that his £500 million bond that was being asked to be paid, which is a lot of money, which, you know, when people like Trump say they've got all these billions, this is not liquid cash. This is not just money in their bank. This is in investments, in property, all these different things. And he's saying, I don't have that money to hand. So that's been dropped to 1.75 million. It's quite a big drop. So that's quite a big victory for him. So I'm sure he'll be able to.
Apparently, according to the New York Times, he'd approached 30 bond companies to try and provide the bail, and no one was stumping up for him.
I mean, I don't know if I blame them, really, because that's quite a lot of money to potentially lose in such a tumultuous time for him.
You're not going to do your Trump impersonation?
Well, I don't know. I think they're all losers. I don't know. I think this is against me.
That's very good.
I'm never going to live that one down on my...
I think they're all losers.
Well, I thought the Biden tweet yesterday was quite funny as well, actually, when the Biden camp retweeted up something that Trump had said about the golf course, and he'd won this and he'd won that. And then the Biden tweet was, "Congratulations, Donald. Well done."
Yeah, I mean,
great achievement.
Giving yourself a medal for getting an award from your own golf course. I know it's like to celebrate, but yeah.
It's definitely a hole-in-one.
Yeah.
If you're under 30, Claire, or around about 30, you're more likely than any other age sector in the country to earn more than £1 million a year.
I know, isn't that amazing? Wish I was under 30.
Same.
But no, you'll hear about how all these young people, life's so tough for them, and you know.
Oh, I know, and you can't sack them. You can't say boo to a goose, and they open up a fridge.
You can't earn £1 million.
Yeah,
So how are they making all their money? Is it tech?
Is tech, but the ones that they're quoting here are musicians like Dua Lipa and an ex-member of One Direction, who are now No Direction.
Niall Horan.
Exactly, it is Niall Horan.
Yeah, and the footballers.
And all the footballers.
Yeah.
Was it Ireland went £375,000 a week?
Yeah.
I mean, this is extra. I mean, footballers have always earned a lot of money.
Do you know what the average salary in the Premier League is? The average salary.
What is the average salary?
£3.6 million a year.
What?
Yeah, that's for average.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And half of them can't even kick a ball into a goal.
This is coming from the rise of things like TikTok and social media being so popular with young people. So now all these celebrities are becoming younger, and you're seeing all these influencers on YouTube. I mean, they're all in their early 20s, late, teenagers sometimes.
But it's not real, Alex.
But it's real to the young people.
They couldn't. I'll tell you what. They could not operate an alarm, get themselves out of bed, get on a bus, and go to a job.
I don't disagree with you.
My goodness me.
I don't disagree with you.
Talking about operating things and being older, Claire, there's a new invention. Well, it's not new if you've got scheduled doctor's appointments and things. But anyway, you can go out there and you can get a battery-free implant which attaches to your bladder to see how sensitive your bladder is. So basically, what it does is, when you wake up and you think, oh, I think I want to go, the way you do all morning, I think I want to go, I do want to go, I do or don't.
I generally do need to go,
It will tell you if you really do need to go or not.
Right. Is it tricking me?
If you're at the tipping point.
Oh, I need that at bedtime because I'm in bed and I'm scrolling on my phone just before I turn the lights out, and then I always have to have a just in case. Because I think I don't want to be woken up in the night, but am I just tricking myself? So I need a bladder implant.
You need a bladder implant.
Lovely.
Yeah, and apparently it's the end thing, and it's the end thing in America, and you can get multiple sensors.
So hang on, Eamonn.
Hang on. Summers right now.
Right. So you're going to have a brain implant. You're going to have a bladder one. Where else are they putting them? Because
poo.
Oh, there
That's
we go.
another thing where you're not sure if you need to go or not.
I think that's a bit clearer.
But this is the interesting thing about about the future and about, you talk about being young. You won't need that. But being your age, Claire, I'd say that's a good investment. It's a good investment. I'm just saying, I'm just being honest.
Do you know? Look, you're being provocative.
You've taken the words out of Claire's mouth.
I know, you rendered me speechless.
This is how I'm going to become a billionaire, like one of these kids, isn't it? I'm going to start making all of these weird inventions about when you need to
take away the functions that our bodies do intuitively, naturally anyway, that we don't need. That's what all these kids are doing.
Anyway, as a woman of a certain age, you can't make me laugh too much.
Yeah, we might need some bladder control there. Let's talk about the Kate effect. Front of the Sun, I think the Times also running it, and this is all about the Princess of Wales revelation hugely driving up sort of people suspicious of whether they might be sick or not. I mean, do we really believe that already people's lives are being saved?
Well, I don't know whether they're being saved yet, but I think that the intention is, I mean, I think they said the same thing about King Charles when he also came out with his cancer diagnosis. I think this is actually the biggest part of that message of those videos, is that if you're concerned, and I saw the NHS put out a statement as well a few days ago saying, if you're concerned about cancer, go and speak to your GP urgently. Go now. And it's good to see someone as young as Kate doing this, because there are a lot of people who are young that do get cancer, and it's a bit of a taboo amongst young people to talk about cancer, because you think, I'm young, I'm invincible. Well, actually, if you have any concerns, you should just go to your GP. There's also some good news off the back of this, a story, I think it was from the Mirror, saying that there's new science now that's discovering these dormant cells in breast cancer for women that is able to detect them. So you can get this preventative cancer treatment to stop those cells from multiplying, which is incredible. And with, you know, the good side of AI also identifying cancer where humans might miss it. It's amazing stuff.
And, you know, all age groups, it's terrible.
It is.
Affecting all age groups. But the saddest thing I've ever experienced is the Teenage Cancer Trust, whereby, you know, there's teenagers there and you see them one week and they're not there the next week. And but hopefully the Get Better stats are increasing. They're getting better all the time, which is really good.
I'm still agog at the fact we haven't found a cure for cancer yet, with the amount of money and research that's been plugged into it. Russia last year had said they were very close to finding a cure for it, but Putin pulled it, or he was, you know, there's just so much out there we just don't know from one day to the next.
I'll tell you who else is out there. The Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, is there this morning, because the government's set to fund specialist support for children with just various conditions: autism, learning difficulties, mobility. Secretary of State, you can tell us more what you're trying to do and who it affects. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Eamonn. Yeah, well, what we're trying to do is expand the number of places for special educational needs. So everybody, every parent who's listening who has a child with special educational needs may have felt at times that they're sort of battling to try and get the right support or the right provision, because we've had a massive increase in demand. So what we've been doing over time is increasing the number of places. So what we've been doing is putting more money into it, 2.6 billion. This is the last tranche today, 850 million. And overall, that will increase the number of special educational need places by 60,000 all across the country. So every area will get an increase in capacity.
And will there be any impact on councils, you know, and their provision with this increase in funding? I mean, the pressure, you said this is increasing capacity. Lots of parents are saying that this isn't working well. I think actually you've been quoted saying it isn't working well, the system for anyone as it stands. Are there any sort of pressure points still after this funding's been released?
Well, we do have a special educational needs improvement plan, and that shows that we know that we need to improve the system. And there's a number of strands to that. So there'll be more workforce being trained as well, educational psychologists, SENCOs, etc. So there's a lot of things in the plan. But this specifically is looking at more places. But the council pressures, we have increased this sort of high needs budget to pay for this part of their budget to 10.5 million. So that's actually gone up 60% in the last 5 years to cope with that increased demand. But we also have two programmes to work with councils delivering better value and safety valve, because we know, you know, it's not equal, and it has gone up quite considerably, because we just have more and more children with special educational needs, probably because we know more about special educational needs and we care about making sure we get the right provision for children.
Yeah, and just to be clear about this, you're not talking about the way maybe in days of old it would be that children with similar conditions would be educated together, put together, or are you talking about them being integrated into ordinary classrooms?
Well, we have some integration into mainstream schools, and we have some separate annexes which we've created more places within mainstream schools. But also there are times when you need specialist provision, so particularly with specialist autism provision, for example. And some of that today is being provided by the independent sector. One of the things that many people don't know is our special educational needs provision today. About 38% of the schools are independent schools. And that's why this pernicious education tax that Labour are proposing would absolutely destroy that sector as well. So we're trying to build up the number of places by 60,000, but we do need to make sure that we keep all parts of the sector in place, because they're all doing different things, and it is very broad spectrum of different need that we're trying to meet, or they're trying to meet. But then largely they're specialist trusts with a lot of track record in delivering specialist provision.
OK. I want to talk to you this morning, if you will, a little bit about China. And there's reports about cabinet clashes on how to deal with whether you call it a challenge or a threat. Obviously, at the moment, the Prime Minister sticking with challenge on that. Treasury worried about our economic partnerships, you know, fifth biggest trading partner for us in the UK. Where do you stand on this? Do you think these sanctions have gone far enough? And do you think they should be declared a threat?
Well, it is a complex issue, clearly. I mean, what they've said is there's, you know, sanctions, obviously, for what the National Cyber Security have said have been breaches, and there's 2 individuals that have been sanctioned, and there's some other travel restrictions as well. And what Oliver's said is that's the first step along the way. I mean, I'll be going to Cabinet after this morning round, so we'll be, I guess, talking about it there. But I do recognise the complexity, because clearly, you know, starting, you know, some sort of trade issues is what we want to avoid as well. So it is complex, but we do need to be firm as well. And we've been working with our allies both to understand the threats that we face, either as parliamentarians or to our electoral system, or to other things as well. That's why we obviously took steps to take Chinese-owned companies, state-owned companies out of our national infrastructure when we took those steps a couple of years ago. So we are always vigilant, and we are always aware and looking and working with others and our allies. But of course it is a complex problem as well, because we do get a lot of our imports from China.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Just explain that one again to me. You do want to avoid trade issues. Now, that's the key. That's the key to everything. So you can act annoyed with them, but you can't really be annoyed with them and do anything practical about it.
Well, I mean, the diplomatic part of this is obviously going to be handled by the Foreign Office, and they will have the ambassador in. I think they've called for the ambassador to come in. But clearly everybody knows what the complexities of this situation are. You've got national security, but you've also got, you know, a large trading partner.
The language that's been used to describe this, turning up to a gunfight with a wooden spoon, that was what one SNP MP said. And then you've got Ian Duncan-Smith, who's been personally a victim of a lot of the spying by the Chinese, saying that the sanctions that were announced yesterday were like an elephant giving birth to a mouse. Daily Mail this morning saying fury at feeble rebuke to China. I mean, Eamonn's absolutely spot on, isn't it? You're toughening up your language, but really, this is going to have no impact at all on China.
Well, this is the first step, but I think, you know, it is something that colleagues are always considering. And we did, you know, we have taken action in the past. I think it was quite a big decision to take Huawei, as it was, out of our national infrastructure. That wasn't an easy decision at the time, but it was one that we took. So we do take measured responses, but we do take response. And of course, we will always be vigilant and always look to what we need to do. National security is the most important thing. So, you know, in this case, you know, they were not successful attempts, but of course we all need to make sure that that remains the case. And our electoral system, there's a lot of elections going on this year, is absolutely key, and we need to make sure that we protect our security.
Secretary of State, thanks for your thoughts this morning. Good luck with your project in integrating those kids with disabilities and various other problems into the school network. We appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Alex, the Secretary of State, you know, talking there about the whole trade issue, which is what we were touching upon earlier on. You can say, now, China, you're being very bad and you're being very naughty, and we're going to tell everybody, we're going to call you out and say that this is not right. But China must be going, yeah, whatever.
I think you nailed it, Eamonn, didn't you? It is. I mean, I think that characterisation by Ian Duncan-Smith is perfect. An elephant giving birth to a mouse. We again, appearing to be tough, but not really doing anything. And I think it's because, again, if you look at what's happened over the last decade or so, we're so entangled with China, we can't get out of it.
Is there not an opportunity for us here? I mean, if all of us were more conscious about where we were buying our goods for, we could build up a bit of a manufacturing industry industry here. You know,
I think we would want to do that, but I just don't think. I think capitalism just goes for the cheapest deal all the time, and it rules.
It does. And remember years ago, Claude Littner and I were on Muscai with you, and we were.
I'll never forget that day.
And
so it's uppermost in my mind. Claire and Claude Littner.
But we were talking. Stop it! We were talking about how firms come in, buy overcut, and dismantle things.
Yeah.
Right, take things down, destroy what was there, and then sell all off individually.
See, capitalism, you could argue, capitalism is a great evil. You could
but the alternative is Xi Jinping's communist China, where he's arresting his citizens, doesn't allow them to message each other. There's no freedom, there's no voting, there's no choice and selection.
But you could argue there's no freedom in capitalism either.
Well,
you know, you're just you have to buy a certain soft drink or a certain food or something.
Maybe the argument is that there is actually no perfect system. I think that the issue we've got is that we've got this globalist form of capitalism. It's not very nationalised, so we've now become so reliant on other countries for everything. Imagine if, I'll just say this is the perfect picture for people. If I said Amazon stops delivering to you tomorrow, the uproar would be insane. I think people care more about that than anything else.
OK, Alex and Claire, thank you both very much.
You're welcome.
Back in 40 minutes.
If you behave yourself, I'll be back.
OK, you love it. What's that wet stain?
Eamonn!
I'm going.
I'm going. Stop it.
Did you spill that drink there, did you?
Stop it. Unbelievable. Right, Alex Burkle's going to raise the tone for us, hopefully. Here's your forecast. Might be a bit damp, who knows?
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There will be some dry weather around today, but also a swathe of rain pushing its way northwards. And this morning we do have some outbreaks of showery rain across parts of Scotland with a bit of sleet or snow over the higher ground. The brightest weather this morning will be across parts of northern England, the Midlands and into East Anglia. But here it is going to turn cloudier as we go through the day, with a bit of rain pushing in as this swathe of rain across southern parts gradually makes its way northwards as we go through the day. Also some outbreaks of rain across parts of Northern Ireland, and temperatures for many of us will be around or a little bit below average for the time of year, especially across parts of Scotland. A bit of a chilly feel here. As we go through the end of the day, the wet weather across much of England will feed further northwards, so a pretty wet end to the day across northern England, and then a wet night for much of Scotland. And as that rain hits the high ground over the Highlands, the Grampians, we are likely to see some further hill snow. Something a bit clearer following in behind, so temperatures taking a bit of a dip, many places falling to low to mid single figures. But quite a few places waking up to a bright start on Wednesday, particularly across central parts of England. However, towards western areas, southwestern parts, here we will have some heavy blustery showers. Could have a bit of thunder mixed in with these as they gradually make their way northeastwards. Temperatures again around average for the time of year, perhaps a little bit below, but it is going to be a touch milder than today for many of us, albeit quite blustery at times. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could win big. You could win an amazing £12,345 in tax-free cash that you could spend however you like. Plus, there's a further £500 of shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. We'll also give you a gadget package to use in your garden this spring. That includes a games console, a pizza oven and a portable smart speaker, so you can listen to GB News on the go. You have to hurry, as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good morning. It is 7 o'clock. It's Tuesday, the 26th of March, and you're tuned into Breakfast with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Thank you for your company. Leading our news this morning, ministers poised to formally declare China a threat to our national security. 2 individuals and 1 company face sanctions after the data of 40 million of us has been leaked.
Yes, the government is using tough rhetoric on Beijing, but there are plenty of Conservative MPs saying that it's simply too little, too late. Find out more with me very soon.
And one of those is the former Conservative leader, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith. He says the sanctions do not go far enough.
Whilst I welcome these 2 sanctions from the government, it is a little bit, this statement, like an elephant giving birth to a mouse.
Think of that one. Farmers fight back. Tractors bring rush hour chaos to Westminster, all around the House of Commons, as more than 100 gathered around Parliament last night in protest over the lack of support for UK food production. Your views very welcome throughout the programme this morning.
And with more services than ever going online and over 2 million older people in the UK without access to the internet, we're asking, are retirees victims of online Britain? That's our debate this hour.
And in the sport this morning, Wales could get to the Euros if they manage to beat Poland in Cardiff tonight. Declan Rice will captain England for the first time on his 50th appearance against Belgium. That's 50th appearance for England, not against Belgium. And it's not just England, by the way, with shirt problems. Germany will be wearing pink. What would Franz Beckenbauer?
Morning. This week's unsettled theme continues today. Most of us will see some rain at some point. There will also be a bit of hill snow over the high ground of Scotland. I'll have more details shortly.
So it's our top story this morning. China could be declared a national security threat after the UK and US have accused China of cyber attacks, which have targeted personal information of politicians, journalists and 40 million voters.
The Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, spoke about this. He condemned the attacks on a statement on X, formerly Twitter, last night.
Attacks on our democracy are unacceptable. Yet that is what organisations backed by China have done. Today, we are publicly calling them out, and we've taken action. We've summoned the Chinese ambassador, and we are putting sanctions, travel bans, asset freezes on the individuals and the group responsible.
So here's the thing, our political correspondent, Olivia Otley. Cameron said he's calling them out, but a lot of people are saying, but hold on, Dave, you called them in.
Well, I mean, that is what makes this very, very difficult for David Cameron. It was David Cameron who was Prime Minister when the golden era of the relationship between Britain and China was first heralded. George Osborne and David Cameron talked up the possibility of a huge, important future relationship with China. And looking back on what they said now, some of it has really sort of aged like milk. We know now that China is a threat to the United Kingdom. This latest cyber breach, we've seen cyber breaches before, but this is a particularly big and worrying one. The data of 40 million voters has been accessed by Chinese spies, and perhaps more worryingly, a group of about 43 parliamentarians and their staff have been being followed online by Chinese spies. Now, there are plenty of Conservative MPs who say that what David Cameron is saying now, although it might sound tough, actually doesn't go far enough. Yes, the government is saying that sanctions have been introduced reduced. But those sanctions are on relatively small Chinese companies and relatively lowly officials in the UK. In the US, meanwhile, 12 very senior Chinese officials have been sanctioned. So the sanctions don't go far enough. That's what Conservative MPs say. And they also say that Rishi Sunak is wrong not to actually officially designate China as a threat to the United Kingdom. Now, that may all just sound like semantics, but these MPs say that it is very, very important, an important global sign that the UK designates China as a threat. That's something that Liz Truss said that she wanted to do. Of course, she never got the chance in her 6 weeks as Prime Minister, but something that Rishi Sunak has always just fallen short of calling for. Is it something now that he will feel the pressure to do? Might it be an option for him to show that he is serious about this without introducing further sanctions, which could, of course, be very damaging to the UK economy?
We spoke to Gillian Keegan just a few moments ago, and we were talking about the cabinet splits on this. She said she's off to a cabinet meeting as soon as she's finished the morning round, but it sounded from what she said as if she was kind of on the Treasury and presumably Prime Minister's position, being ex-Treasury, of being concerned about harming that economic partnership. But there are others within the cabinet who very much think that this is the opportunity. If not now, when? What will it take, really, for us to wake up to this? We've kind of sleptwalked into this position, haven't we?
Well, absolutely, and there are plenty of very senior Conservative MPs and certainly a few in the cabinet who think that now is the moment to get tough on China. You've got some really influential Conservative backbenchers, former ministers, saying today that the government's reaction is feeble. Those were the words of Robert Jenrick, the former immigration minister, and of course, very close friend of Rishi Sunak's. Suella Braverman is saying similar. Ian Duncan Smith has a piece in the Telegraph today saying that the government just hasn't gone far enough. He is a former leader of the Conservative Party. These are influential backbenchers. They are big hitters, and they are pushing the government really, really hard on this. They're a really organised group, and Rishi Sunak will find it pretty hard not to bow to that pressure, especially when his own leadership is looking so precarious.
Olivia, thank you. We'll leave it there. The time 6 minutes past 7. Shamima Begum has lost her latest attempt to challenge the removal of her citizenship at the Supreme Court.
You'll remember that Begum travelled to Syria when she was 15 years old to join ISIS. She had her citizenship revoked on national security grounds in 2019.
But it didn't end there. Since then, she's made multiple attempts to appeal that decision. She claims she's a victim of trafficking. We're going to find out from filmmaker and journalist, a man who's met and spent time with Shamima Begum in Syria, Andrew Drury. Andrew, good morning.
Good morning.
Andrew, you know, this is a very complicated and in many ways a very sad story, but people take sides. And I think the problem with Shamima Begum is, and I don't wish to sound cruel about this, but I just think this is practical, is that people don't care. They don't care. They think it's over and done with, and they think she's... it's right that she doesn't get back into this country. I would say that is the mood, the feeling out there. What would you say?
I agree. But even her citizenship wouldn't mean that she comes back into the country, because she can still face trial in Syria. And I think that's the right thing to do, because you've got to remember her crimes were committed on the Syrian people. If she was part of what they say the morality police, there'd be a few people that would have been frightened of her image. So I think she should have faced trial there in any case. So I don't think she should have come back, whether her citizenship was revoked or not. And you've got to understand, the Court of Appeal will refuse this because the evidence they had against her. I know by speaking to witnesses on the ground that she I would say quite certainly sewed suicide vests. I would say that she was definitely part of the Hizbullah police by the people I was saying. So I think it's the right thing to do. And I think it stops that question about this country, will she come back? I think it's definitely no now.
I mean, you talked about the Court of Appeal. That case was unanimously dismissed back in February. One, though, of I think the Lady Chief Justice, she said it could be argued the decision in Ms Begum's case was harsh, but she said it could also be argued that she's the author of her own misfortune. I suppose this all hangs around the fact she was 15 when she went out there, which is quite clearly a child. You've met her since as an adult. Do you think she's gaming all of this? Do you think that she's trying to act remorseful because she's seen the way the caliphate has gone and just wants to come home? Or, you know, what was your impression of her authenticity, I suppose?
It started at the point, because I've met her on 6, 7 occasions. When I first met her, I had that feeling that she was trafficked and she was a young, scared girl. She'd made a mistake. She was quite apologetic in a way, regretting what she had done. What changed my view on her is over a period of 2 years, she'd changed her character into this victim. Somebody got to her and said that she was, if I give you, for instance, when I first met her about her husband, she said she loved her husband. She looks forward to being back with him. By the time I'd finished speaking to her,
sorry to interrupt. Yeah, just to remind people, he was a Dutch IS member who we believe beheaded and executed lots and lots of people. He's in jail somewhere.
And this was a woman that she said, and she was aware that he did that. She loved him. She cared about him. A lot of people said that would have been part of the radicalisation, but it wasn't, because she showed me pictures of scenes of her kid with chopped around the face. She painted this picture of a lovely family relationship. And by probably about a year or so into the relationship, she told me that he mentally abused her. And she became all of a sudden, after a year and a half, this victim, she was a victim of trafficking. I'd never heard that for the first year of meeting her. The word trafficking, radicalisation never come out of her mouth. It's only towards the end. And she changed because she thought the opinion would change if she changed. As you can see, the Western clothes. This was orchestrated by the other girls in the camp that she became friendly with, the rest of the Western girls.
Yeah. But Andrew, you say she could face trial in Syria, which sounds a very frightening prospect. Is she free to leave Syria? Does she have nationality anywhere in the world? What are the options open to her?
She has no options. Her options are none. I mean, she has to stay there. I know what she's like now because I've got a contact in the camp. She's suicidal. She's contemplating suicide. She doesn't come out of a tent anymore. But I think we've all got to realise what she's capable of, or what she was capable of. We feel sorry for this. We keep going back to 15, and yes, she was 15, but this girl would have committed crimes in this country if she was asked to, and we've got to be aware of that. And not only that, we can't be sure how safe she is as well, because they have telephones in the camp, and I know that there's camp marriages to higher ISIS officials. So that's still going on in the camp. And we don't know whether she's still been in contact with ISIS throughout the time that she's in that camp. And I would suspect she probably has. I mean, I managed to get text messages to her for 2 years.
Yeah. But ideas don't die, do they? They just, I suppose, they go underground. And a lot of us have kind of thought the threat from IS or ISIS had sort of passed. And then you look at what happened in Moscow last week and you wonder, how real the threat still could be. I mean, France have just raised their terror threat level to the highest level, haven't they, in response to what happened last week. We have to be mindful of that this could all happen again.
Well, you might say the threat's lessened because the news don't show it anymore, because their eyes have been on probably other things and other wars, as we know. But travelling backwards, unfortunately, Syria and Iraq, I mean, the threat's never gone away. I mean, it's lessened because they took Raqqa and Baghouz and places like that. But there's pockets of ISIS all over the place in the Middle East. It hasn't gone away at all, and the threat is still live and real. Probably with even this country in itself, there's pockets. So we don't know what she's capable of. I mean, I certainly don't know, because I know her for 2 years. At one stage, she said I was the closest person to her, and I don't know her. And I think she is a threat, even if it's just for what she stood for. And I think her punishment's right and justified.
But Andrew, she's free, correct me if I'm wrong, to appeal and appeal again. I don't know who's paying for this, but she obviously isn't paying for it. And she can keep coming back and say, I'm going to try again. Can she not?
I think the Court of Appeal said no. There's organisations such as Reprieve and people like this, and I don't understand where she gets all this money. And I don't think that's right in this only case. Let's talk about millions of her defence. I find that absolutely shocking. And no one I ever hear talks about the victims of Syria were at the hands of people like her. I don't even know why we're so that concerned and bothered about her. We keep going back to the age of her being 15. But 15-year-olds, believe me, in Syria, commit the most heinous crimes. So I have little sympathy for her.
OK. Andrew, very, very interesting hearing from you, and the fact that you have met her and you have visited her. That's the story of Shamima Begum, who's lost an initial bid to challenge her citizenship removal at the Supreme Court yesterday. Andrew, thank you very much indeed. We'll leave it there. Thank you.
It's 7:14. Let's take a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom this morning. And the UN Security Council's calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza for the first time since the war began in October. The US abstained from the vote, but this was a move that signalled weakening relations with Israel, who then quickly cancelled a visit to Washington in reaction. It comes as the UK have delivered its first aid package to Palestinians.
Donald Trump will face trial next month in the first ever criminal trial of a former or current US president. In a win for him, he was granted a 10-day extension to pay his fine, which was reduced from $360 million to $140 million. Republican spokesperson Jennifer Ewing spoke to GB News.
With each one, Trump's numbers went up, right? So people do not care about this. They know that Donald Trump, especially in this case, has been one of the most well-known real estate moguls in New York City for half a century. Nothing like this has ever been brought up. He ran for president, as we know. Nothing like it was brought up during his presidency. And so now when he decides to run again, this is coming out.
UK border forces have been slammed for holding 2 victims of the October 7th Hamas music festival attack for hours at Manchester Airport in an incident that many are calling anti-Semitic. The Home Secretary James Cleverly announced on X the incident was being investigated, saying we do not tolerate anti-Semitism or any form of discrimination.
Pensions, and we were talking about the state pension being held back from this current generation. Gillian says, we paid into this all our working lives. State pension is paid by one generation for the next to receive. My pension was delayed 5 years, 11 months and 10 days. I think I should receive some recognition for money withheld from me.
Keep your thoughts coming in on all of that. Lots of people have been getting in touch as well this morning saying why they're up bright and early, because we were talking about how the sky's beginning to lighten earlier. And we've had people saying that they're going off to work this morning. They've already been for a walk on the beach, and he was settling down to paint for 10 hours, and he goes for a walk on the beach.
What, like paint the living room or...?
You know, painting pictures. He's a professional artist. So we love to hear what you're up to, why you're up so early as well as us, and whether you're coming off a night shift as well. Keep that coming in, gbvs@gbnews.com.
OK, and if you are heading out, you've yet to head out, here's how the day will look. Alex describes that.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There will be some dry weather around today, but also a swathe of rain pushing its way northwards. And this morning we do have some outbreaks of showery rain across parts of Scotland with a bit of sleet or snow over the higher ground. The brightest weather this morning will be across parts of northern England, the Midlands and into East Anglia. But here it is going to turn cloudier as we go through the day, with a bit of rain pushing in as this swathe of rain across southern parts gradually makes its way northwards as we go through the day. Also some outbreaks of rain across parts of Northern Ireland, and temperatures for many of us will be around or a little bit below average for the time of year, especially across parts of Scotland. A bit of a chilly feel here. As we go through the end of the day, the wet weather across much of England will feed further northwards, so a pretty wet end to the day across northern England, and then a wet night for much of Scotland. And as that rain hits the high ground over the Highlands, the Grampians, we are likely to see some further hill snow. Something a bit clearer following in behind, so temperatures taking a bit of a dip, many places falling to low to mid single figures. But quite a few places waking up to a bright start on Wednesday, particularly across central parts of England. However, towards western areas, southwestern parts, here we will have some heavy blustery showers. Could have a bit of thunder mixed in with these as they gradually make their way northeastwards. Temperatures again around average for the time of year, perhaps a little bit below, but it is going to be a touch milder than today for many of us, albeit quite blustery at times. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Will we give some money away?
Yeah, why not? I'm in the mood.
£12,345. The competition is open until Friday. It is the Great British Giveaway.
Want to be a winner just like Phil?
Obviously, whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
Enter our massive spring giveaway. There's £12,345 in tax-free cash to give your finances a spring boost. We'll also send you on a shopping spree with £500 worth of vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. You'll also get a garden gadget package. You have to hurry, as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats, and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Still to come.
Just reading about Nadine Dorris,
yeah,
the politician.
she's made some headlines today.
She's saying, why at 66 men are suddenly telling me I'm sexy and desirable.
I mean, I have to say the consensus from the men in the office is she is sexy and desirable.
She is. She's
something
about
her.
Very attractive woman, has to be said. You know, Nadine, I know what it's like being of a similar age and similar sort of reaction to things there. But I think the surprise at this is that people are surprised that she's getting compliments at 66.
I don't think they are. I think she just wanted to put it on the front of the Daily Mail. She knows it's not a surprise. Just thought she'd celebrate her wonderfulness.
What, you're saying she's not attractive?
She knows everyone knows she's hot. She just wants to shout about it on the front of the paper.
Yeah,
Don't you think?
Yeah, but I'm saying the fact that it makes headlines is wrong.
Yeah.
But, you know, she should be able to show herself off like that, I suppose. Yeah. Very good.
We'll be discussing that in the papers as well a little bit later on. And after this little break, we're going to be talking about big cars, those SUVs, Chelsea tractors, whatever you want to call them. Should people who drive them pay more for the privilege? We'll be debating it in just a moment.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, Oxford City Council could be set to charge 4x4 drivers higher parking fees. The Green Party's put the motion forward. Many say that's outrageous, branding it another attempt to use the motorist as a cash cow.
Yeah, it's just the same old stuff. Should drivers of bigger cars be taxed more? Joining me now, meteorologist Jim Dale. He thinks, yeah, he'd get the boot in there and get whatever money he can out of all of it for whatever reason. We'll find out very shortly. And motoring journalist Danny Kelly, who disagrees on this. Danny, I'm with you, mate. I've got a Range Rover, Vogue, and love it. I need it. I would argue I need it as well for my disabilities, getting in and out and whatever. And I just don't see the point. I drive very few miles, so I really don't see why I'm being penalised for this, or could be.
I agree. It's the politics of envy. And if you scratch the surface, this is a proposal from the Green Party in Oxford. And if you scratch the surface, Eamonn, the truth comes out. In our view, a large number of drivers don't need to have such a big car. Larger cars are more expensive. So in the same way that the wealthy should be paying more for public services, larger car owners should pay more if they choose to have them. There's nothing behind these proposals that aren't common sense. But what they don't realise, Eamonn, is that you drive a Range Rover, SUVs, they start at like about $1,000 nowadays for something like a big BMW X5. So the Green Party's perception is an ignorant one, a baseless one. So they want to charge someone double to park in Oxford city centre, or maybe not allow them in the city centre because they're large cars and they're worried about pollution. They use the same engines as their saloon equivalents, so that's debunked the emission one. And as far as wealth is concerned, wealth associated with large cars, I don't know how old your Range is, Eamonn, but if you had a couple of grand, you can buy an equivalent but an older Range Rover. It doesn't mean that you're minted.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. And also, just before we cross over to Jim, I just want to say to you, you talk about mobility allowances and whatever. So whether it's a Qashqai, whether it's a Nissan, whether it's a Kia, they're all doing cars that are raised off the ground. I mean, they all look 4x4. I don't know, do they come into the same? Cars are getting bigger, it has to be said. Are they getting more dangerous as a result, Danny?
Well, there's no evidence to suggest that. Oxford, the Green Party in Oxford haven't come up with any data to say that, unfortunately, 3 people lost their lives because they were hit by an SUV as opposed to a Ford Focus. So for people who are proposing such draconian legislation and council laws, they should really be coming up with some hard facts to say, listen, if that lad hadn't been hit by a Range Rover, he'd still be alive. But there's none of that.
OK, well, I know a man who likes a hard fact, and that is Jim Dale. So tell us, is it true then, the same engines in saloon cars as these big 4x4s, and therefore the same emissions?
Yeah, look, there's several issues here. The first one is Oxford itself. If you've ever driven into Oxford, it's basically one big road going in, and the rest of the roads are quite small. So my first point here is, why would you want to drive into Oxford in the first place? It's well served by public transport. You can park and ride, and in a bus. That's what I would do. I don't know that you, Eamonn, in your big car would drive into Oxford and drive around Oxford, because the streets are very small. So there's a reason, one reason why Oxford might be Oxford Council, which is a progressive council, moving in this general direction. Look. Generally speaking, SUVs, I don't think we're looking at the smaller end of the SUVs because they're more or less the same as other vehicles. We're looking at the medium to higher end, the big stuff. They do contribute more to the climate change, fossil fuel emissions. They do, and proven in America that because of the high front end of many of these vehicles, the visibility is less, and the potential of accidents of killing people is more, and that was proven in the early 2000s in the US, exactly on this point. So for all of these reasons and many more, as I said, this is a progressive thing, and I think we're moving in this direction anyway, in terms of saying, look, let's stop these cars going into city centres. Let's make sure that it's pedestrianised, this type of thing. Yeah, drive them on open roads, no problem. Drive them on dirt tracks, no problem. But into small city centres like Oxford and other cities like Lincoln and
that doesn't deal with the problem with all of this, Jim. You've got a situation where you're getting rid of the bigger cars so that we'll get 5 smaller cars in their place. I mean, the real problem, and Danny, I'll get your opinion on this, I genuinely believe there are too many cars in this country, absolutely too many cars, and we should be making cars probably more expensive so that, and no politician's ever going to do that, but cars more expensive so that people will buy less of them, fewer of them.
Well, firstly, I'll answer Isabel's question that Jim dodged. Isabel, the engines that go into high-end SUVs like Audis and BMWs are identical engines to the ones that go in, say, Audi A4s and Audi A6s. So that takes care of your question. As far as Eamonn's concerned about too many cars on the roads, I agree with you, mate. You know, you drive, I'm based in the West Midlands, and you drive through suburbs of Birmingham, and there are cars littered, almost like discarded, because you've got tight terraced housing, and you've got 3 or 4 car owners in the tight terraced house. There's far too many. But of course, Eamonn, I'm a car dealer. So I'm also going to caveat that with saying you could never have enough quality used cars. But I do agree with your central point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just on that point, on the tax point of view, I think we know that if taxes are put in there, it tends to put people off cars or anything for that matter, and thereby Eamonn's point about fewer cars. Yeah, I would agree with as well. I think that's the direction of travel. I think that's the direction of travel with ULEZ. I think it's the direction of travel with SUVs and other very large vehicles. I think we all want to sort of drive towards a city centre, maybe park the car in a car park and get on the bus or whatever other vehicle, maybe even a taxi. But this public transport, this is what's happening. This is what's unfolding in front of your eyes, and we don't need the big vehicles in the middle of city centres, whether it be London, Oxford, Lincoln, Birmingham, or wherever else. If we can keep them out, and that small movement in tax is more likely to put people off buying these cars, and therefore that is a step in the direction for taking cars off the road completely.
Final point, Danny, the electrification of cars ain't going well. It's not going well at all. Sales are well down, and you and I know the reasons for all of that, particularly on the second-hand market. But I read at the weekend that Merck and BMW are continuing to make combustion engines and will do for at least for the next 6 years. So they've drawn back from their commitment to go all electric.
Yeah, and good for them, so they should. The market isn't there at the moment. The infrastructure, the charging infrastructure simply isn't there unless you have the luxury of having a charging point. I'm speaking generally here, but unless you have the luxury of a charging point outside your front door, they're very difficult to actually get on with. You know, we hear horror stories, range anxiety, and range anxiety isn't a fallacy. You know, people genuinely are worried about going long distance journeys in these cars. And the used car market, honestly, in the last 18 months, I mean, they've halved. I'm going to say something that is obviously incorrect, but you can't give them away. That's an expression for you.
OK, gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. It gets people thinking. It gets people talking this morning. They'll get in touch with us. Thank you both for initiating the argument on that. GBviews at gbnews.com.
Thank you both. Just whilst they were talking, there is a breaking and developing story happening in the States, which we'll try and bring you pictures of a huge bridge in Baltimore that has collapsed after being hit by a ship. At least one vehicle has fallen into the water. This is an ongoing situation, obviously very serious. So we will try to bring you those pictures. Apparently it was a cargo ship that hit this bridge in the US city. And as I say, we'll keep a close eye on that. The police there attending say that there could be a number of workers in the water as well.
Got the sport after the break. See you then.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We were just talking about taxing bigger cars, putting more tax on bigger cars. Brian says 4x4s like Land Rovers do pay more car tax. Insurance has gone through the roof. That is if you can get it, Brian. And parts and maintenance are more expensive. An extra charge would be totally unfair. Paul says electric cars are far heavier. So they damage roads more, so they should be taxed at a higher rate than combustion cars. A lot of nonsense. If it makes any difference, what damages your roads is articulated lorries. The amount of lorries that are on the roads as opposed to being on train lines. That's what I would say. Here's Mr. Coit. He's got the sport. We're all behind Wales tonight.
We are behind Wales tonight.
Wales tonight.
Yeah, huge game, because we're in the middle of the international break. Premier League and everything is back on Saturday. But as far as Wales are concerned, huge game. They've got to beat Poland tonight. Simple as that. One-off game. Whoever wins will go to the Euros.
OK.
Young side. Average of 20... Young team, their average age is 25. The average amount of caps they've got is 43.
Oh, it's a lot.
So that tells you that they're
well
rubbing them
seasoned.
in. They are well seasoned as youngsters. So very hopeful that they're going to manage to beat Poland tonight.
Now, the commentator for the England-Belgium friendly tonight is a friendly, isn't it?
Yeah, it is friendly, yeah.
Better be well seasoned in the team, because second half they're coming out without their names on the back of their shirts.
That's correct.
Why?
The first part, yes, it's because of dementia. It's raising awareness around dementia. Of course, a lot has been said around football, going back to Jeff Astle and the amount of footballers that suffer from dementia. And, of course, people that are suffering dementia. So the reason behind that is is to raise awareness, is if they take the names off the shirt, it's probably symbolising the fact that memories are lost by people with dementia. So that's the reason for that. The numbers are still going to be on there. So you'll be OK with the numbers. It'll be like the old days, but just in case, you should be able to recognise because they're all very well-known players. But you're not too...
Well, you explained it very well last time, just to form the association. If it is, they're saying, look, the proportion of footballers who contract dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever is much higher than those in the average population. Then I would say, OK, let's form a link, let's find out if that is the case. And if it is the case, should those players still be heading the ball?
Well, this is it. They've stopped it with kids younger when they're training and they're heading the ball. And also the ball. I mean, we go back 40 years, 50 years.
What were your balls like when you were younger?
Well, they had a little stitch in them, actually. They had a little stitch in them. I tell you,
leather. I used to hit my thigh and leave an imprint that was there for...
I tell you what, I remember, because it's not the fact that I'm old, Eamonn. It's the fact that the school I went to just had very old balls. And they were smaller, but they had stitching in. They actually had stitching in.
Absolutely right.
And if the stitching catches you... I tell you what, it would sting. It really would sting. But if you can imagine heading that, then you're going to be in all sorts of trouble. So anyway, the game is tonight. They're playing Belgium. You know, I always think Belgium is a bit of a wasted generation.
Why?
Well, because I think of De Bruyne, Courtois, Alderweireld, Vertonghen, Witsel. I was writing all these on the way in. Lukaku, Hazard, Dembele. They should have won the World Cup. They should have won everything, but they haven't. And I think they should have done it. I think it's just a wasted generation. But anyway, they're going to be playing England tonight. It's going to be a friendly. Declan Rice, 50th cap for England, and he's going to be made the captain.
Birthdays today, and today is the March 26th, Tuesday, March 26th. So if it is your birthday, you share it with.
OK, let's have a look. We're going to play the game. I could do with Isabel Webster here to actually guess who they are and the age. Let's go with the first one, shall we? I think we have something. Hopefully, we have one of the players. OK. Well, you know what? We've actually got a video of someone in action, and it was one of the iconic moments of the World Cup.
They don't have that either.
You know what?
It's all right, they're in the wigs.
We can either do this,
or we can...
There we are. Now, look, there it is. Diana Ross.
Oh, down the middle.
1994. So the idea is that she'd run and she was doing the song, she'd take the penalty, it was an empty goal, all she had to do was knock it in, everything would explode, and she missed the damn penalty.
She did.
How old is Diana Ross today?
I'd say she's 80.
You think 80? She's more of a defender than a striker, that's the thing.
85.
80 is correct, isn't it? She's 80 today.
No.
Hey, have you met Diana Ross?
No, I haven't met her, but I remember she got arrested at Heathrow Airport for arguing with the security people, and which is something you should never do. And, you know, I had said this to my wife when we were in New York, and they said to her, "Ma'am, you can't take these liquids in your bag." Here. Right, so any normal person would say, no, you're quite right, take it. After that, if they've arrested Diana Ross, you know, so basically she said, well, I was allowed to bring them in Belfast Airport and I was allowed to do, which was nonsense. Nonsense. It was like complete nonsense. But anyway, she starts in this argument and then they confiscate everything. And not only that, all our photographs on that holiday in New York, I got them developed when I was out there. And then they were lost.
You never got them back?
Never got them back.
No.
That was lost.
Oh, my goodness.
But, you know, if anybody says, we're gonna search you or whatever it is, just say, yeah, fine. What is people's problem?
I've always said
what is people's problem?
I did make
I think somebody's been shouting in my ear, what have we not got now? Mikel Arteta. Right, well, that's good. We're good.
Diana Ross, by the way, I made her recreate that in a hotel room once with a football. It's true, absolutely true. I did, and she was perfectly lovely about it. And I said, we made a goal in the Grosvenor House Hotel, and she scored. So
right, Mikel Arteta. Let's see him.
Okay, Mikel, here he is. Let's see a little picture of him. How old is Mikel? Oh, there is Mikel.
Yes.
So how old is Mikel Arteta?
I'm going 38.
There he is.
38.
38. Well, yes, that could be.
See, the thing is, this was him early in the morning, so he's looking a bit tired. So maybe.
He's the same age as Captain Black.
Yes.
Anyway, I'd say 38. I'd say maybe that hinges on slightly young, although he has got into management very young.
You're doing very well.
I'll go where we did. Diana Ross at 80.
I'd go for double, aren't you? I can see this.
40.
40?
1.
2.
42.
42.
Oh,
not bad.
Wow, I shaved 4 years off him.
You
He must be
did.
delighted with that.
It's because he didn't have his hat.
Because
on.
there's no
That's what
grey
it is.
hair.
That's what it is. Yeah,
He's
that's what
brilliant
it is.
in that Captain Scarlet, so he's brilliant.
That's his finest hour, I think.
Finest hour, absolutely
But
brilliant.
good work on Diana Ross. Very good.
Yes,
Oh, the day's work.
Yes, sir.
Just what I do.
Thank you very much, my friend. Alex Armstrong, Claire Muldoon. They're going to have a Wing Ting argument next. See you then.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
You think this country needs new gas power stations? Apparently, this will all be about trying to get some form of energy security. Rishi Sunak has upset people today with this suggestion, people saying that actually this would do more damage to climate change than it would do good. Where are you on it, Richard?
I'll tell you exactly where. We need a lot more gas power stations and nuclear power stations because quite often the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. Last week, we imported 16% of all our electricity because we haven't got enough capacity in the UK, and we're now totally over-reliant on renewables.
The part of the problem is the lack of storage capacity, which the government has finally got round to addressing. I think this as backup is actually quite a sensible idea. But they are not doing anything, as far as I can tell. At the moment, it will be retrofitted to have storage capability, which seems to be utterly bonkers. I mean, anyone who's got solar panels, you know very well you're storing up energy. So it's about storage as much as production. And they could have gone, 20 years ago, we could have had nuclear power. We could have done more. We haven't looked far enough ahead in the future, and we are in grave danger of making the same mistake. I mean, the other side of this is, what is the difference going to be? Blackouts are, they're irritating and...
Irritating? It'd be disastrous. It would literally destroy our economy.
Well, they would be now, but, some of us remember 3-day weeks and things like that. And in fact, I grew up thinking that everybody had, at least a couple of days a week when they had to eat off a primer stove and things.
This is, again, I don't want to harp on, but this is one of the problems in the politics in our country, isn't it? So many politicians, they just think in election cycles. Absolutely. They just think, what can I do and say to get my own backside re-elected at the next general election? They're not always looking ahead. Actually, politics aside, what is genuinely the best thing for this country?
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Dubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news that we were talking about a little bit earlier in the programme, a serious situation unfolding. 1:35 in the morning, local time in Baltimore in the United States, a cargo ship crashed into this bridge that you're seeing if you're watching on TV. If you're listening on radio, absolutely spectacular pictures. This is the Francis Scott Key Bridge, and it shows 1.6 miles of that bridge collapsing into the water. It's thought a number of vehicles went with it, and so a huge operation is underway to try and recover a number of people who tragically are thought to be in there. Awful. Never seen pictures like that before.
We have seen Claire Muldoon and Alex Armstrong before this morning, and they are back to talk about stuff that's going to get everybody talking. And Claire, I think this farmers' protest at Westminster last night it hasn't got as many people talking as it should.
I agree with you.
And I say, you know, people don't take this stuff seriously until their food is curtailed and their services and supplies to supermarkets and shops and whatever. What have you got to say about this?
Well, I agree completely with what you're saying. It was difficult to find this actually in the papers, and it was only in the Times and the Telegraph that made it onto the front page. So we've got tractors and farmers coming from all over the country, and what they're protesting about is the sanctions that the government are putting on them. We are an island that has got some of the best produce in the world, the best cattle, the best beef, the best dairy farms ever.
But a lot of this is about handing their land back to the environment.
Exactly. So DEFRA have then said, well, look, we can't let you we can't arable farm, you can't cattle farm, you can't have dairy farms, you can't have vegetables or
And will the Chinese be doing this?
Well, who knows? We'll probably have AI. We'll have.
Well, my point is, nobody else is doing this. They're not doing it in Brazil. They're not doing it in China. They're not doing it in India. But we should do it, shouldn't we?
Well, it's all this net zero nonsense. It really, really is. And when we were talking about China before, I wanted to say, but I didn't get the time. Why are we not holding China to account for net zero? Why are we building on infrastructure to try and deplete we're depleting our farming stock and our farming crops because of this? It's absolutely ridiculous.
I mean, DEFRA have a difficult path to walk, don't they, though? I mean, seeing as everyone's speaking out against net zero, I'm going to put the other case.
Of course,
on this.
Isabel.
And you've got farmers who are putting slurry into our rivers, trashing them. They've got a responsibility, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, to try and clear up our waterways. It's not always, although we like our farmers and we want to support them, they also have to be responsible.
They do, but I think their hands are absolutely tied. There's no money in it. They're working 70 hours a week in some places. Their hands are completely tied. They're not doing what they want to do. And the other thing is, as us as consumers, we should be eating seasonally. And I think that's probably
They were saying that a lot of the stuff that wears the Union Jack on the product that you buy in the supermarket is actually not necessarily British farmed meat or produce. I don't know how that's happening.
I don't know how that's happening either.
To do with where it was packaged as well. There's clever ways they can get around that. There's smart ways that the supermarkets do that. Actually, it's not the farmers, but it's supermarkets. There's a specific badge you need to look for if it's produced in the UK. So,
and the supermarkets do this thing like they give it a lovely name, Croft Farm Produce or whatever it is, and it's from an industrial estate,
aged
or something.
beef.
And there's no such thing as Croft Farm.
No such thing.
Nothing free about them.
know, and this obviously this is not unusual in Europe because there's been these protests across France, and I think they went to the EU. They were even putting manure out on the streets of Paris, and so this is actually a European-wide thing. And the press aren't paying enough attention, so I'm really glad we're talking about it.
Absolutely, I am too.
We need to support our farmers. They are the lifeblood of our. We talk about inflation. Food inflation is one of the worst hit parts of this whole crisis.
There's no need for it in this country.
We can resolve
it. And if we don't look after farmers, all of the countryside that we all love and enjoy and celebrate as being our green and pleasant land will just be concreted over and turned into flats and whatever else.
And called racist.
Wow.
Claire, what do you make of Nadine Dorris, front page of the papers, and she's saying that why, at 66 years of age, are men suddenly telling her she is desirable?
I know, I wonder where she finds these men. I wonder if she's on an app. How did it do
Is she married?
No, her husband sadly passed away a few years ago from cancer. So that's actually one of the key factors on that article. They were saying that one of her mates said to her, well, why are you surprised, Nadine, that men are finding you attractive? You've lost the grief. So it was as if she was saddled with grief and she wasn't giving the impression that she was out there, that she wanted to find love and that she wanted to possibly marry again. She makes the comparison between herself and Fern Britton and the comparison between herself and Mary Helven, who, of course, was girlfriend of Mick Jagger. So, you know, she's good luck to her, but the datings, some of the dates she's been on sound absolutely disgusting, don't they, Alex?
They do.
Yeah, go on.
Can I just say that the bit that really got me, I think this is peak irony, right? She says, right at the end of this description of a date, she says, I just lost 3 hours of my life sitting next to him at a dinner as he talked endlessly about his favourite subject, himself. And I thought, hot kettle, Nadine. I was like, you must have really hated that date. Anyway, thought that was great irony.
One of the things she needs now in a man is at least that he has his own teeth.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Standards are high.
Claire, would you be interested in dating?
What are you doing to me today?
I'm just asking you. You're a single woman.
How do you know I'm single?
Oh.
No, I am. Anyway.
But would you be interested in it, or could you just not be bothered?
Oh, of course. I'd love to find love, and after
Are you on the apps, Claire?
No, I am not. There's enough of me online without me being on an app.
I do think working in television does make it particularly hard if you do want to go on an app.
Oh, yes, I agree.
Not that I've ever had this dilemma.
Nor that you
These
would
apps
ever
were created after I found my husband. But
yes.
Legoland and Alton Towers. The owners plan to charge more at peak times.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Alex?
Yeah, this is like an Uber for theme parks, isn't it? I mean, everyone seems to be doing this new peak time fare thing. They're already really expensive. I haven't been for years, but the last time I went, it was like 50 quid a ticket. And these are kids. These are for kids. I mean, so the surge pricing thing, I just think it's just another reason for poor parents who only get the weekends to take their children out are now going to get planted with more money. But it just seems like another way to get money out of people. I mean, I know they're suffering since the pandemic, these theme parks, but I mean, come on.
No, I think it's going to backfire on them, actually, because it's another way of... it's another class system, really.
Yeah.
I mean, they moot it as being surge pricing the way hotels do, the way cheap budget airlines do. But the reality is they are hitting those that can't afford it most.
Right.
And it'll be, instead of giving parents the choice of the timing or the weather to go, they won't be able to because it'll be defined by them.
OK, Claire and Alex, thank you very much indeed. We'll talk to you again in 45 minutes' time.
We want to show you these breaking pictures coming into us from Baltimore in Maryland in the United States. That's the live picture, but we'll hopefully also be able to show you the moment this 1.6-mile stretch of bridge collapsed after being struck by a container ship. A number of vehicles were on the bridge at the time. Emergency services are in the water searching for people. We'll have the latest for you throughout the programme.
Warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There will be some dry weather around today, but also a swathe of rain pushing its way northwards. And this morning we do have some outbreaks of showery rain across parts of Scotland with a bit of sleet or snow over the higher ground. The brightest weather this morning will be across parts of northern England, the Midlands and into East Anglia. But here it is going to turn cloudier as we go through the day, with a bit of rain pushing in as this swathe of rain across southern parts gradually makes its way northwards as we go through the day. Also some outbreaks of rain across parts of Northern Ireland, and temperatures for many of us will be around or a little bit below average for the time of year, especially across parts of Scotland. A bit of a chilly feel here. As we go through the end of the day, the wet weather across much of England will feed further northwards, so a pretty wet end to the day across northern England, and then a wet night for much of Scotland. And as that rain hits the high ground over the Highlands, the Grampians, we are likely to see some further hill snow. Something a bit clearer following in behind, so temperatures taking a bit of a dip, many places falling to low to mid single figures. But quite a few places waking up to a bright start on Wednesday, particularly across central parts of England. However, towards western areas, southwestern parts, here we will have some heavy blustery showers. Could have a bit of thunder mixed in with these as they gradually make their way northeastwards. Temperatures again around average for the time of year, perhaps a little bit below, but it is going to be a touch milder than today for many of us, albeit quite blustery at times. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Want to be a winner just like Phil?
Obviously, whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
Enter our massive spring giveaway. There's £12,345 in tax-free cash to give your finances a spring boost. We'll also send you on a shopping spree with £500 worth of vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. You'll also get a garden gadget package. You have to hurry, as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, cash? Text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Coming up to 8 o'clock on this Tuesday morning. It is the 26th of March. You are very welcome. I am Eamonn Holmes, and that is...
Isabel Webster. And our top story this morning, ministers are poised to formally declare China a threat to our national security. 2 individuals and 1 company are facing sanctions after the data of 40 million British voters was leaked.
We're going to be talking about this live very shortly. Critics include the former Conservative leader, Ian Duncan-Smith, who said the sanctions just don't go far enough.
I welcome these 2 sanctions from the government. It is a little bit, this statement, like an elephant giving birth to a mouse.
Earlier, we spoke to the Secretary of State for Education, Gillian Keegan.
Do take measured responses, but we do take response. And of course, we will always be vigilant and always look to what we need to do. National security is the most important thing.
Farmers fight back. Tractors bring rush hour chaos to Westminster as more than 100 gathered last night around Parliament in protest over the lack of support for food production in this country.
And with more services than ever going online and more than 2 million older people in the UK without access to the internet, we're asking, are retirees victims of online Britain? That's our debate this hour.
And bringing you that breaking news. What you're seeing here, these are just amazing pictures. Baltimore, USA, a container ship. Just watch this. It hits the bridge and it just crumples. The casualties involved in that, we'll bring that to you very, very shortly.
And in the sport this morning, huge game for Wales tonight in Cardiff. If they beat Poland, they're in the Euros. England play Belgium and Scotland take on Northern Ireland in friendlies. And Andy Murray has ruptured his talofibular ligament. It was pain like probably a mouse giving birth to an elephant.
Morning. This week's Unsettled theme continues today. Most of us will see some rain at some point. There will also be a bit of hill snow over the high ground of Scotland. I'll have more details shortly.
these pictures overnight, breaking news this morning. If you didn't believe what you saw, just watch again. This is Baltimore, USA, and that container ship hits that bridge. The bridge just crumples there. Absolutely devastating to watch there. What's the news on casualties on that one, Isabel?
Well, the Baltimore Fire Department is saying that this is a mass casualty incident. At the moment, they're working on the assumption that at least 7 people are in the water. I think we have to be grateful this happened at 1:35 a.m. local time. If that had happened at rush hour, it would be an even more serious casualty total. But at the moment, they can't be sure exactly how many people are in the water. And, of course, under the cover of darkness, incredibly difficult search and rescue mission underway there. But a cargo ship, as Eamonn said, believed to have crashed into the 1.6-mile-long Francis Scott Key Bridge and took out the entire thing. So we're keeping a close eye on that developing story for you, and we'll bring you the latest if we hear any more.
Leading our news this morning, main story is China could be declared a national security threat after Britain and America accused it of cyber attacks targeting personal information of politicians, of journalists and of millions of you, ordinary voters.
Well, the pressure is actually on to sanction China further after growing criticism of the government that it has not gone far enough.
Joining us to discuss this, former head of counter-terrorism at the Ministry of Defence, Major General Chip Chapman, and former Liverpool MP, crossbench peer, Lord David Alton. Lord Alton, if I could start with you. Good morning to both of you. What's your own personal experience of all of this?
Well, 3 years ago yesterday, I was one of 7 parliamentarians who were sanctioned by the Chinese Communist Party, and yesterday was one of 4 who were invited to meet with the security service to a confidential discussion about some of the threats that parliamentarians and the country are facing. I think the real concern I have, having listened to the statement by Oliver Dowden yesterday, is that he said this was robust. And he said it was a strong response. But it seemed to be neither of those things to me. It wasn't robust, it wasn't strong. He also said it was swift. Well, it's 3 years since sanctions were imposed on parliamentarians. And Ian Duncan Smith has used this metaphor about the elephant giving birth to a mouse. Well, it's a bit like, if I can use a different metaphor, it's like closing the door once the horse has bolted. 3 years ago, many of us said, the House of Lords Committee said, the Intelligence and Security Committee said that we had to regard China as a threat.
Right,
and name
OK,
it as
so why
such.
hasn't it not been regarded as the threat you believe it actually is? And I put it to you, that is because trade and China is worth too much to this country.
Yes, indeed. And that's a point I've regularly brought out, that we have got ourselves so indebted that we've become dependent. Do you know what the trade deficit this year is with China? It's a staggering £50 billion.
So they're 50 billion better off in this deal than we are?
They are indeed. And if you go back to COVID, for instance, one example, we spent £13 billion on things that we could have bought within our own country, made in our own country, instead of which we bought from the Chinese Communist Party's regime. And, of course, some of it's made by slave labour, exploited labour, so, of course, you can get it cheap. Look at what they've done in Xinjiang. There are 1 million Uyghur Muslims incarcerated there. Look at what they've done in Hong Kong, where they've destroyed not just a treaty made between China and Britain, an international treaty. There are 1,700 political prisoners in the prisons in Hong Kong. Daily there are threats to Taiwan. You think about the dreadful things that the Chinese Communist Party is responsible for, and what do we do in response? This is weak and half-hearted.
In short, you say half-hearted there. In short, this is all bluster. There is no structure to all of this. It's to make it look as if we care, as if we're upset about this, but actually China holds all the trump cards.
It's weak and it's limp. It's not a strategic response to what has happened. We've made ourselves dependent. We should be making ourselves resilient against the greatest threat this country faces. It's at the apex. China is at the apex of the threat. With it, in the axis of authoritarian regimes, are Russia, North Korea and Iran. This represents an enormous threat to this country, and we needed more than the statement that we had in the House of Commons yesterday.
It all boils down to politics, though, doesn't it, in all of this? Because it's not going to win elections if we're going to be financially worse off by cutting off China in any harsher way than we have with these very meagre sanctions, as you point out. And you also look to who's responsible for this. Well, you've got Lord Cameron, who cozied up to them in the first place. He's not even being, some would say, democratically accountable, not addressing the Commons, even able to attend the House of Parliament, the Commons on this. And then you've got Rishi Sunak, former Chancellor, who's always worried about the money and getting re-elected rather than perhaps the national interest.
Well, that's quite true. The first minister we sent to Hong Kong wasn't a foreign office minister, it wasn't a defence minister, it was a trade minister. Why are we trying to deepen trade with the Chinese Communist Party?
Well, was that not because their Foreign Office counterpart had gone missing? They didn't have a foreign secretary in China because they'd just disappeared at one point.
But we sent a trade mission to Hong Kong. This had nothing to do with whether they had a foreign minister or not. We were trying to deepen our trade, just like the Golden Age that David Cameron promoted in the past. It's extraordinary to me that one of the four great officers of state, and I say this as someone who's sat in both the Commons and the Lords, is held by someone in the House of Lords. It should be held in the House of Commons. There are plenty of people. We heard Sir Ian Duncan-Smith in the news clip earlier on. He's a former leader of the Conservative Party. I'd much rather see him at the helm. But there are other people. There are people who've been Prime Minister who sit in the House of Commons.
Well, David Cameron was Prime Minister as well, and he went for a pint with the Chinese president in Oxford, didn't he? You think those pictures haunt him now?
Well, I hope that they do, because he needs to both recant to that period, the golden era, which was anything but, and recognise that the indebtedness of this nation to China places us in a parlous and perilous position. This is dangerous. It is a strategic threat, and we should say so. It should be in the enhanced tier as well, which we've failed to do. We make it up as we go along. The Intelligence and Security Committee of Parliament wrote a report that was held back last year for months on end, and finally, when it was published, it even named David Cameron in that report as saying that the work that he'd done in building up the Belt and Road initiatives, which have been worth $1 trillion in debts to third world nations, money that is now owed to the People's Republic of China. David Cameron was personally involved in that.
Listen now as we bring in Major General Chip Chapman on this one from a security point of view, all of this. Major General, you've listened to what Lord Alton has had to say. What can we do, if anything, that could be deemed as effective against China?
Well, it's used as a tool of subversive statecraft by China. The difficulty is often to do with attribution. So determining what machine or networks have done the attacks is challenging at the best of times, and a hacker or intrusive operator can mask that. So you often have plausible deniability. Now, we know that China do this on a regular basis, and advanced persistent threats were mentioned in terms of the reconnaissance of the parliamentarians. That is very dangerous because, of course, they can micro-target, as they attempted to do, for example, with other forms in Cambridge Analytica in 2016. Yeah. Whereas our security agencies have to work within a legal, ethical, and a regulatory framework. The Chinese don't do that, so they can micro-target, for example, in the next election, in constituencies to remove people who are critical to them, such as Ian Duncan-Smith. So we can defend forward actively, and the UK, GCHQ, and the American NSA are cyber superpowers, which in extremis could degrade, defeat, and disrupt the Chinese networks themselves.
Are you in effect saying there that you don't think we're going to face a fair election in this country in 2024 because of this cyber threat? Quite an extraordinary thing to say.
Well, if you look at why the Electoral Commission was hacked, the big thing about data is not just the data which came from the Electoral Commission. It's metadata, which is a thing which always concerns us. That's data about data. And the more data you have on people, the more you can influence those people by this micro-targeting, either via social media, disinformation, and things like that. So if you had a number of vociferous critics of the Chinese in various constituencies, there could be that micro-targeting in those areas, because it's only really sort of generally about 5% of people who change their minds in elections, which could alter the outcome of a constituency election.
The measures that were announced by Oliver Dowden yesterday done enough, do you think, to now make our elections this year free and fair?
Probably not, but the security agencies will be looking into the intrusion of these networks. It's very difficult to do because it's networks, it's servers, it's software, it's hardware. It's a contested environment, and the internet and the architecture of the internet was never designed to be contested. That's the big weakness of it.
Chip China can do what it wants, absolutely do what it wants. You heard Lord Alton talk about the 50 billion trade deficit with them. We're in financial hock to them. They own half of this country. You look at London, they own so much of that as well. We look at the COVID situation. It seems to be widely accepted that it originated in a lab in China and no one has done anything about it. I mean, I think that's more important than interfering with elections even. But no one has said to China, oi, what was all that about? We know you were behind it. And nobody is saying or doing anything about it or holding them accountable. So they win. They win, and they know they're going to win everything.
Well, there are internal problems in China at the moment, and the big thing for China is always that it needs to sort of create 25 million new jobs a year. The notion that it's going to surpass the US in terms of its economy is looking more fragile. So it has its challenges, which it may have to sort of slightly ameliorate its position. But let's be clear, the Chinese Communist Party is there to make sure its rule endures. We'll do anything to make sure that happens in the future. So it's always going to be something which is malign. It is this sort of pinnacle of what we would call the CRINC countries, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, as the sort of face of the authoritarian regimes, which will seek to challenge us in the future. There are weaknesses. I don't think, for example, that the Davison window, as we call it, a potential invasion of Taiwan, is anywhere near. And there are real challenges to that in terms of all the military aspects about, counter-submarine warfare, mine warfare, all the rest of it. So they're not as strong as they appear to be. They are weaker than they appear to be. The Belt and Road Initiative is not as strong as it was. People are sort of waking up to the indebtedness that the Belt and Road Initiative brings. So don't paint China as a country. It's really not. It's a malign country. It's not as strong as we often think.
Chip, thank you very much indeed. Lord Alton, final word to you about where we're at and where we're going on this.
Well, first, we do have to see, as we've just heard, the strategic nature of the threat that is facing us. We must do more with our allies. For instance, the government announced yesterday a couple of more sanctions. There have been no officials in Hong Kong sanctioned. Our United States allies have sanctioned over 47. Why aren't we doing these things together? Why aren't we working more closely with our allies?
Why aren't we?
Well, if you take the example of Huawei or Hikvision, both of which I raised, of course, in Parliament at the time, we went ahead and did those things because it suited the gravy train that was moving. And as a consequence of that, it's cost taxpayers in this country vast sums of money to get out of it. The same will be true of electric cars and the batteries and everything else that China is going to try and flood our markets with, some of it made by slave labour. If goods at least had to be marked, for instance, as made in a state accused by the House of Commons of committing genocide and made by slave labour, at least consumers would be able to decide whether they wanted to buy them or not.
Just lastly, does the Prime Minister need to come out and call China a threat instead of a challenge?
Yes, he does.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Your views, very welcome. gbviews@gbnews.com. Other stories coming into the newsroom on this Tuesday morning. The Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore in America has collapsed. This was at 1:35 a.m. local time, hit by a cargo ship. And a lot of that cargo spilt into the water. Emergency services are at the scene searching for 7 people believed to have fallen into the river. The Baltimore City Fire Department has called it a developing mass casualty event.
A convoy of more than 100 tractors made its way through Westminster yesterday to save British farming. They say there's a lack of support for UK food production. The action follows months of protests from EU farmers amid the growing threat of food security facing the continent.
UK border forces have been slammed for holding 2 victims of the October 7th Hamas Music Festival attack at Manchester Airport in an incident many are calling anti-Semitic. The Home Secretary announced on X the incident was being investigated, saying, "We do not tolerate anti-Semitism or any form of discrimination." Shamima Begum, we were talking about her an hour ago on the programme, and she failed in a Supreme Court hearing yesterday about getting her British citizenship back again. Barbara says, "My opinion is we all know how evil she is and she should never be allowed back in the UK. Keep her out."
Yeah, Shamima Begum's not a British citizen. How come she's getting unlimited legal aid, says Carol. James also commenting on her lawyers keeping at it, running up their bill that we have to pay for. It strikes me they don't care what happens to her as long as they can keep it and the bill running.
Strikes me, says James, that the lawyers, they don't care what happens to her as long as they can keep at it and the bill keeps totting up. Time now for our spring giveaway. The final week, Friday, it all ends, to see how you could win gadgets, a shopping spree and an amazing £12,345.
Here's how you can do it.
It's the final week to see how you could win big. You could win an amazing £12,345 in tax-free cash that you could spend however you like. Plus, there's a further £500 of shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. We'll also give you a gadget package to use in your garden this spring. That includes a games console, a pizza oven and a portable smart speaker, so you can listen to GB News on the go. You have to hurry, as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GB-WIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Right, coming up, we'll be debating whether or not pensioners are the victim of online Britain. Stay with us for that.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Yeah, well, when it comes to fish and chips, we all know they're a part of a British tradition, and the Golden Chippy is an award-winning restaurant, and for years they've been serving the community here in Greenwich, and even today on a Sunday they are fully packed today. But this is the issue. Here we've got a mural and which says a great British meal. Residents who live in this area who've complained to Greenwich Council, who say it's inappropriate considering it's in a conservation area. Here's what some of the local people we've been speaking to had to say.
What's wrong with it? It looks all right, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? Look at some of the other graffiti they've got around in Greenwich. They don't want to take that down, do they? But when you've got something like this, it's half decent, they want to remove it.
Fantastic artwork. I really like it. Reminds me of Banksy.
Well, those are the views here from people who live in this local area. But I'm kindly joined by Chris, the owner. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. You've been here for 20 years now. Tell me how this issue has come up.
They take pictures. It's only been up for about a month. And it's been very, very popular. I don't want to believe that any of the locals are complaining that this is too loud or anything like that. They say it needs planning permission. How a little thing like this needs planning permission, I don't know.
Are you working with an artist in this local area?
I've got a local guy that does murals, so he said, would you like me to do something for you? I said, yes, why not? I said, make sure you leave a bit of space for people to stand there so they can take some selfies or pictures or whatever they want to do from Golden Chippy. And it's been extremely popular, and not one person has come to me and said, that looks terrible. So I cannot imagine the person that complained about this. I think it's just cancelled.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Got a bit of a dilemma debate to talk to you about. Are you computer literate or not? Is it difficult to use it like a different language? Apparently, if you're over 65, you're 65 and over, you're going to find it more difficult than a lot of younger people to do simple things online, to work a mobile phone, to send emails, to send texts, to log on to things, all that sort of thing. Banking is going to be difficult, even to get an appointment with a doctor, as it all goes digital.
But some have little sympathy, say it's about time we all got online. So we're asking this morning, are elderly people victims of online Britain? OK, former Conservative Shadow Home Secretary Anne Widdecombe joins us today. Anne's no time for people who think like that. She says just get on with it. She says retirees just should go digital. And there's a former head teacher, friend of the programme, lovely to see Chris McGovern there, who disagrees. Chris, what are the problems that you think face older people on a daily basis? And I think a lot of people will identify with you here on this one. What have you got to tell us?
Well, let me say, first of all, that this so-called older generation is a very resilient generation. It's not going to be looking to be called victims, although in some ways they are, because the modern digital age has to some extent passed them by. So, as you have mentioned, if they want to make a doctor's appointment, often they have to go online. If they want to go to a bank, the high street bank is closed, they have to do it online. If they want to park the car, they need the right app. So there's quite a lot to cope with there. And look, there are some older people and generation have no problems. But I think Age UK, who have raised these issues, are concerned about the fact that, to some extent, an older generation has been marginalised, and also they are more likely to be scammed. About 1 million older people are scammed each year. They're victims of that crime. So we're not looking for victimhood in that sense, you know, but the victimhood pie is very, very large. So if there's a pie to go around, why can't older people have a share of that pie as well? So there is a problem here. And I think we should recognise there's a problem. But look, older people are resilient, but we want to look after them. Oh, I don't feel that old myself, but yeah, I don't mind being looked after too.
Well, let's bring in Anne in all of this. I'm interested to hear what you say, because you think people need to get on with it. I'm 41 and there are certain texts that I find hard. I've got an 8-year-old son. He was showing me the other day how to use the apps via my remote on the TV. And I'm thinking, if I'm struggling with this at 41, it is a problem. Do you acknowledge there are challenges in this area, Anne?
Well, first of all, I think you should stop lumping all old folk together. There is an enormous difference between somebody in their 60s, who almost certainly comes from the age of computers at work, and somebody in their 90s who are struggling a bit, whose brains don't work quite as fast as they used to, and who fear the new technology. Now, so there's an enormous difference. I'm sick of hearing, pensioners as if we're all, in the last stage of dodderiness. I mean, that is the first thing. The second thing is this. The very sophisticated stuff, obviously, you wouldn't expect them to do. But online banking, for example, is fairly simple. It can be mastered. Most old folk, not all, I'm the first to say that, but most old folk have access to the younger generation who can show them what to do. And so I think we do have to get on with it. I remember when computers were first coming in the sense of becoming utterly normal in offices. I can remember a fellow MP, the late Andrew Rowe, saying to me, "And if we don't learn this stuff, we're going to be like the maiden aunts of our youth who hadn't learned to drive." And he was right.
So, Anne, do you learn it? Are you taught it? Do you have a go-to professional who can show you things, or a friend? Who do you rely on, if at all?
I rely almost 100% on a go-to professional who can come into my screen and sort out all the messes there. But I learn myself how to use the basic stuff. I mean, I do my own online banking. I can fill in forms online. What I do think is that firms don't make it easy for people. You know, sometimes you can't go back on a form to correct something that you've done, and you sit there thinking, well, you know, what can I do? They don't make it easy for people, and therefore I do think that it would be much kinder to have always to have a telephone option there, not to get out of the form, but to be able to telephone somebody to say, I've got a problem with this form. And I think there is a big difference between the two, between saying I don't want to do this and between saying I've got a problem.
And Anne, what if it was HMRC? We hear now they're going to be closed for an extended summer period. You can't speak to a human being. It's all online. You wouldn't have let that happen, would you, when you were in government?
Calm down, dear. They actually reversed that intention. So I think we should all not start alarming people that is going to happen. But actually, HMRC is a very good example. I used to do my own VAT online. Did the whole thing, never made a mistake as far as I know. And then they changed all the software. Yeah. And I said to my accountant, what do I do about this software? And he said, forget it, we'll do it for you.
Well, Chris, what do you see? I mean, there must be hurdles out there you look at every day, every week, every month, and you're thinking, I'm going to come a cropper on this one. What do you worry about? What do you think you've learned or you've got right, and then it changes? What are the concerns for you in day-to-day life?
Look, let me say, first of all, I used to teach 7- and 8-year-olds how to use a computer. It can be done. Anne is, of course, a very bright lady. She's an Oxford graduate, and not everybody's been to Oxford and is highly bright.
Yeah.
I remember my own mother, who was called Dorothy Dot, used to ask me 20 years ago, who is this .com person then? It wasn't entirely stupid. Look, the fact is, Anne's right, there are differences between different people. And the tragedy is there's not the alternative. We do want the tax office to have a telephone line. We want the high street banks to be open. And technology has changed. But look, we mustn't run down older people. On the whole, according to international surveys, older generation are better educated than the younger generation. We spend all our time telling the younger generation to get off the internet. And now we're telling the old generation, get on the internet. We do need to help older people, give them training, give them support as far as we can. But Annie's right. It varies from person to person. But not all as bright as Anne. That's the problem. My mom wasn't like Anne.
Yeah, Chris, you know, you being the school teacher that you are, and we talk about so many subjects on the programme, but Anne, I find younger people, let's say people 40 and under, their lack of knowledge and general knowledge is really quite disturbing, and it makes me think that they did not learn in school the way we learned things. And I don't know, they have a different knowledge than us, they have a different expertise, Chris was saying there, but we are different. I mean, I would be happy to take on any person younger than me, like significantly younger than me, on a quiz show on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or whatever it happens to be, because they just don't have an interest, never mind a knowledge.
No, and I suspect one of the problems is that when they do acquire knowledge, they acquire it through the internet. Yeah. Now, if you've got to go to a library and find a book and look it up and make notes, it tends to go in. If all you do is just throw it up on the screen and then it's gone when you've no further use for it, it doesn't tend to be retained. And I'm sure that is one of the reasons why young people sometimes just don't seem to have the breadth of knowledge. But the other is, you know, the curriculum's changed completely. Chris will know as a teacher, you know, there's a great deal of time now spent on what we would once have called non-subjects, as opposed to, you know, the details of history or whatever. And look, I'm not saying that I expect everybody to be able to cope with every last aspect of the internet. I don't. But I think that most people, certainly below the age of mid-80s, can be taught to handle the basic stuff which you might need every day. It's all very well, Chris, saying the bank should stay open. But why should they maintain these premises when, you know, decreasing numbers of people are using them for the simple reason that most of us are taking the much simpler option of doing it online? I don't get this. I don't get why they've got an obligation to meet our reluctance to learn.
I have to say, lots of people over the age of 65 getting in touch via email, so they've mastered that this morning. Thank you both, Chris McGovern and Anne Widdicombe, for that debate this morning. Just want to read a little selection of these. Ellen Miles has emailed, I'm about to turn 80. Happy birthday to you. People my age learned how to use computers in the early 1980s, so stop making out we don't know what we're talking about when it comes to computers. This one's from Bernard Carney. When they first came out, it was easier to understand how to use them. Now they changed the apps to make them confusing, so they don't want you to know what you're doing. That is true. They do continually change and adapt, don't they? Anyway, lots of you getting in touch. It's obviously an interesting point this morning. Keep those thoughts coming, and we'll try and find some time to read out some more in a bit.
Right, now we'll find time for the weather with Alex.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There will be some dry weather around today, but also a swathe of rain pushing its way northwards. And this morning we do have some outbreaks of showery rain across parts of Scotland with a bit of sleet or snow over the higher ground. The brightest weather this morning will be across parts of northern England, the Midlands and into East Anglia. But here it is going to turn cloudier as we go through the day, with a bit of rain pushing in as this swathe of rain across southern parts gradually makes its way northwards as we go through the day. Also some outbreaks of rain across parts of Northern Ireland, and temperatures for many of us will be around or a little bit below average for the time of year, especially across parts of Scotland. A bit of a chilly feel here. As we go through the end of the day, the wet weather across much of England will feed further northwards, so a pretty wet end to the day across northern England, and then a wet night for much of Scotland. And as that rain hits the high ground over the Highlands, the Grampians, we are likely to see some further hill snow. Something a bit clearer following in behind, so temperatures taking a bit of a dip, many places falling to low to mid single figures, but quite a few places waking up to a bright start on Wednesday, particularly across central parts of England. However, towards western areas, southwestern parts, here we will have some heavy blustery showers, could have a bit of thunder mixed in with these as they gradually make their way northeastwards. Temperatures again around average for the time of year, perhaps a little bit below, but it is going to be a touch milder than today for many of us, albeit quite blustery at times. Bye-bye.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News.
Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Andy Murray, never hurry a Murray. Paul, tell us.
Well, you can't really hurry him when he's got this bad ankle. Yeah. Because we saw him yesterday playing in Miami, and it looked like he'd hurt himself, and he's really hurt himself. I mean, it looked like at the time it was pretty nasty, and he managed to play on. So here we are. This is him playing yesterday, getting knocked out of the Miami Open.
You reckon worse than initially reported?
Well, there it is. I know for a fact. See, the thing is, he then got up from that and played on. He's torn 2 ligaments in his ankle, so we're expected at least 12 weeks out. Full rupture of the talofibular ligament. You know, it's one of my favourite ligaments, that one.
Is it?
Yeah, it's one of my favourites.
You know what I can't stand? Footballers, when they're obviously injured and they want to play on. And you know they're not going to run it off or anything else. I just think, get off, get off.
Hold on, when they are injured or they're pretending to be injured?
No, they are injured.
Right.
That annoys me because you know they're the liability to the team.
Right.
It's like playing
and then decide I'm going to play on even though I'm injured.
Yeah.
Absolutely correct. Yeah, I agree.
Nottingham Forest deducted 4 points after an independent commission found that their losses in the 22-23 year breached the threshold. Now, this is a new deduction?
It's not a new deduction. It's just that they are now going to appeal.
Oh, right, OK.
Now, as far as the appeal is concerned, they hope that the appeal will be sorted out before the end of the season because, as I've mentioned before, is that the actual date it's got to be all done and dusted is May the 24th after the season's ended, which means possibly that Nottingham Forest could go down if the deduction stands and they could stay up if they take it away. Yeah. So really, it's left... Really, we want everything sorted by the end of the season. Well, we do. But it could run.
Say you're a team like Luton, who could stay up, or if the deduction is negated, then they go down.
Yeah, it's like VAR, but even worse, because you can't celebrate until the decision's been made. So we're just going to have to watch that one very carefully, but we expect more on that.
Now, tonight you've got Wales against Poland, which will get them into the Euros if they win this. This is such an important game for them.
It is a huge game for Wales. So they're playing in Cardiff, which is a great advantage. Poland, Robert Lewandowski. Matty Cash, you know Matty Cash from Aston Villa, plays for Poland. Although I don't know whether he's going to play today because he got an injury in the last game when they played and they won 5-1 to actually get to this game.
Finland, was it?
No, Finland was Wales. It was Estonia that they got through. But Matty Cash... It's really interesting because he plays for Poland, although he's not essentially Polish. It's his maternal grandfather left Poland 82 years ago. So he decided that he would like to play for Poland because he probably thought, maybe, you know, am I going to get to play for England? Maybe Poland. So he actually went to them and went to the Polish FA and said, you know, I'd be interested in playing. No, we don't want you. Changeing president then came in and said, actually, yeah, we are interested in you playing for Poland. So he's now become a Polish citizen about 2 or 3 years ago and will play for Poland. And the first time he played for Poland was the first time he'd actually been to Poland. So we often see it in other sports going the other way. And
Jack Charlton was the master of all
He was the master.
So you'd see people in the Irish team and then you'd interview them and they'd have a Luton accent, you know?
Yeah, and the thing is, you go, what is the link? You go, well, I did go to Dublin once on the holidays. That's good enough. You're in the team. So anyway, whether he's going to play or not, we'll see. But huge game, so we wish Wales well. They've got a very young side, and they need to win this game tonight to get to the Euros in Germany in the summer.
Now, England play Belgium in a friendly. The other one that I want to talk about, which we haven't met, Scotland, Northern Ireland. That'll be a good one to watch tonight.
Yeah, just like the old home nations. Because I wish they'd bring that.
That'd be a tough game.
It will be a tough game.
When I say tough, I mean physically tough.
Oh, yeah, I should say so. I mean, Scotland lost to the Netherlands, or Holland, as we used to call them in the old days. They lost 3-0. I think Ireland got a 1-1 draw, didn't they? I think they got a 1-1 draw when they played just the other day. So it's going to be an interesting game. And the other really interesting friendly is actually the Netherlands are going to be playing Germany tonight. Now, there's a real old rivalry there, back to the '74 World Cup final. Germany have got a new shirt, so you think that England have got problems with their shirt and all the controversy about the St George's flag. Have a look at this one. We've got the new German shirt. This is their advert. What are we thinking here?
Doesn't look very German, I have to say. It's not what I would associate with Germany, which will either be the green and white or the white and black. Or...
Exactly. They're going with the pink. Now, there's Thomas Muller, legendary Bayern Munich. Look, we've got some subtitles there, and he's saying that people aren't liking it. That's Rudi Voller, because he's going more German legends, you know, and Rudi Voller says, of course he says I like it very much.
Isabel knows these things, but Isabel, why... I mean, Paul raised a very interesting point. We now call Holland, as we used to call it, Netherlands.
Well, I'll tell you this, in Holland, or the Netherlands, they still call their football team Holland, because they go, hop, Holland, hop.
Holland, yeah. And Holland is part of the Netherlands, isn't it? But for some reason, we have to start calling the Netherlands.
it in the football context, but in Holland, they still call it Holland.
In case it's offensive to the indigenous population, is that why we...
I actually don't know the specifics behind it.
Holland is a part of the Netherlands, so therefore, I'm happy with Holland, but I don't want to, get myself in trouble by saying Holland.
Where would you ever get yourself in trouble?
Well, I have done quite a few times.
Well, you've got yourself through this morning, no trouble reported yet.
Goodness,
if you've any
got away
trouble,
with it again.
Would you wear a pink football shirt?
You know what? You like a man in a pink shirt,
I
don't
love
you?
a man in a pink shirt.
I don't know whether it's for me. It's the German thing. I'm looking at history because I like a traditional shirt. OK, I can see they want to go with pink. That's fine, but it's pink.
That's a no.
Is that what I'm saying?
I think so, yeah.
OK, well, we'll see how it sells.
OK, and then I'll wear one.
Thank you. If you have any complaints about Paul, please do share them with us.
Yes,
we'd love to compile.
Tell my mum.
Very good. Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
Stay with us. We're going to be talking about Johnny Mercer. Is he a bit of a hero, or is he going too far in his latest campaign? We're talking about that in the papers next.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
And I'd like to talk about Kate Middleton. Because I'm really confused here. Everyone, where is she? What is she doing? Why did she Photoshop this? Where this, what that? Why can't we just leave her alone? What is going on here? What's your thoughts on this?
I think it's tough because naturally, if I was looking at this and we didn't have all the context of everything that's gone on in the royal family previously, I would be saying leave her alone. But at the same time, I think that the royal family have made a huge mistake by setting a certain precedent when it comes to Meghan. And I think that when you've kind of branded Meghan as the one that's demanding privacy, but then not really realising that she's got a particular role and a duty and has to kind of be paraded in front of us no matter what, then you end up in a position now when Kate really needs the privacy and she can't get it because we're so used to being in their business and finding out everything about them, even after they've given birth. That precedent
I get
when
that,
the women.
But what if it's a mental health issue? What if it's something like that, or a long, ongoing physical thing that she doesn't want to talk about?
But you know what it is? It's because everyone sees the royal family as like ambassadors, so they're thinking, well, she's at home, and some people controversially will be like, well, we need to see her. She's like the face of multiple charities. They're basically, unfortunately, with the royal family, if they're not seen, people are like, well, what's the point of them? And I know that sounds harsh, but this is not some person that she can't work from home.
Well, she's been described as the golden goose.
100%.
I mean, they rely on her a lot, don't they? I mean, she's front page of the newspapers whenever she steps out. It's been amazing actually seeing photos of her this morning, how much we all miss her. We haven't seen her since just after Christmas. What do you think about her being the one to apologise.
Having her take the rap for it, even if she did do it, I think that was quite unfair, really, and they should have had, you know, a bit of a better strategy.
We've got these spectacular pictures, just absolutely amazing. Breaking news for us this morning. Just have a look at this bridge. This is in Baltimore, USA. You're seeing a container ship just driving into it. It's like, you know, Isabel, when you see people who drive double-decker buses or articulated lorries and they go under tunnels or bridges and you say, how did they not see that?
Yeah. Well, look, it looks like Lego collapsing there, but what you're seeing is 1.6 miles of the Francis Scott Key Bridge, and it had a number of vehicles on it. It was, thankfully, 1:30 in the morning, but as you see, it was just like a domino. The whole thing just collapsed. So the fire department, the Baltimore Fire Department, saying this is a developing mass casualty incident, but because it's dark, because it's still nighttime, that search and rescue operation incredibly challenging. And so we are trying to keep people up to date on that story this morning. Really shocking pictures, to be honest.
Right, let's go through what the talking points are of the morning. We say hello, good morning to Claire Muldoon. We say hello, good morning to Mr. Alex Armstrong.
Good morning.
Well.
Morning.
Nice seeing you there. So, Claire, secret court for speeding and TV fines must end. What is this secret court?
The magistrates' courts and the justice of peace courts in this country do menial court cases like traffic offences, TV licensing stuff and everything. But what they've found is that they are actually criminalising those in society that are most vulnerable, because it's a very faceless thing. It's someone sitting in an office with the justices sitting there, right, and they get the paperwork through. OK, they haven't paid their fine, they've been caught, they've been this, they've been that. 90 seconds sometimes, then rubber stamped, away it goes to fines and often bailiffs. They're the justices themselves and the magistrates, who are like people, normal people. They're not legally trained. Anyone can apply to be a magistrate. And for a postscript here, footnote, I think it's a great thing that normal people are magistrates, where it's almost like a jury. However, they have now said that they're not comfortable with criminalising people without status, without evidence, and without any form of legal advice given to the person who's sitting, or the paperwork sitting at their court.
For goodness sake, you know, pay 60 quid and get it over and done with. You know what?
Eamonn, £60 might actually be a lot of money to people. Yeah. It's a day rate at minimum wage.
I know, but in other words, what you're doing is you're just complicating and tying things up with red tape, and so it goes again. And the costs for legal representation far outweigh the seriousness of the offence.
Well, look. TV licensing right for the BBC are often, the statistics are there, and they show that people, vulnerable people in society, single parents, often people with disabilities who can't pay, are actually, because they're the ones that are at home that answer the door,
isn't the issue
and they're being done.
The BBC and the way that they are perhaps not looking after some of their vulnerable customers, rather than these volunteers, justices, and the way that the sort of judicial process is happening. Because as Eamonn points out, we've already got an overcrowded judicial system. We don't have the space, we don't have the people, we don't have the resources. The only people who would stand to gain from this would be the lawyers, frankly.
Well,
exactly.
Well, maybe not, because there's people who are in... You know, it's a shame they don't want to answer the door because of bailiffs coming. This perpetuates a society that is frightened and under the cosh.
Oh, listen, on my Instagram, Alex, this is what gets on my threepennies. There are people who send up drones, right? So they go over a police station or an army base and they send up these drones, and then a guard comes out, right, and says, "What are you doing, sir? You're not allowed to do this, Ministry of Defence property." "Oh, I think you'll find it's my legal right. I can fly anything over Bodmin Moor, and you can't do anything about it." Now, you see, somebody like that, I would put in prison for minimum 17 years. Just, you know, no messing about, that's it. You know, you should not be filming over security, police, prisons, anything like that, but they do.
Their job's worth, aren't they, those people? They like to put... I think they do it for the online sort of...
The notoriety.
Yeah, the notoriety. Yeah, absolutely spot on.
Right, and then the other people I would immediately jail are litter lights.
Oh, they were firing squad yesterday.
Well, I'll put them in firing squad. I'm happy to do that as well.
U-turn. We've got a U-turn live on there.
Understand? They can't. The police force in this country can't find people or men who throw acid on women, but they can blooming well find you if you've got a speeding fine or an unpaid parking fine.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Let's talk about...
I was just... Hold on.
Go on.
Let me litter.
Yeah.
So important. Right, so I was watching on BBC Northern Ireland News last night. Litters, volunteers, which I find amazing. People are volunteers and they go out and they collect all this. And I'm going to become president of a litter society, nationally for the country. But I just do not understand what is in anyone's head that is in a car, particularly they'll be in a car, probably with their kids and whatever, and everything goes out the window.
Oh, it's disgusting.
I remember when I was a kid and we threw a lollipop stick out of the car, my dad would stop the car and you'd have to get out and pick it up with a lollipop stick, and it stuck with you and you didn't do it ever again. So the fines for litter, desecration, defecation, whatever you want to call it.
Let's not go down that road.
There's a lot of that. Do you know what? Defecation is an interesting thing. No, I'm telling you, this litter report last night, apparently people pee and do other things into jars and receptacles and then throw
I'm afraid I've got a story about this. Don't worry. It's not too gruesome. But when I was a correspondent out on the road and I went to do a vox pop, was when you go and try to speak to people. I went to a service station, Easton Gordano, in the West Country. Anyone knows it's where the M5 reaches Bristol, and there's a kind of HGV park area, and I had those long trousers that were trendy at the time that touched the floor, and I went and interviewed all these lorry drivers, and it was all great, and I had all the material I wanted for my report that evening. I got back into the car and I was like, what's that smell? And I looked down and my trousers had soaked up urine from the ground that I
was this your urine?
No, I guess...
Sure. Was it Claire's urine?
That's a very Irish pronunciation. Urine.
Listen, here's a lovely thing. Talking about being wet. Singing in the rain does make you happy again. Now, I have to say, one of the most glorious, the film's not that great, but the actual scene of Gene Kelly dancing in the rain is absolutely beautiful.
It is.
Absolutely stunning. So it is with the music and whatever. Tell us why that actually does make you happy again.
Because the negative ions in the air which we breathe in actually make us happy. So reports have said that singing in the rain might be the perfect way to cheer us up. They say go for a run in the rain, go for a walk in the rain, go for a swim in the rain. And it's good for your mental health.
Hang on a minute, what are these ions? They're good
negative ions.
Negative ions,
Yes.
Well, why don't they sell that in a bottle?
Well, they do. They just wait for the rain to come and then you can bottle it up and...
I'm sorry. Have I been living under a rock? I've literally never heard of this as a cure for mental health problems.
You will have heard of this, right? I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling! I'm happy again.
We're watching GB News Live, everybody.
Very well done. Very well done.
Why weren't you in the choir this morning?
Oh, sorry.
We are the show.
You've got too many negative ions over there.
Plenty of negative ions here. We say thank you very much, Lee. Claire Muldoon, come and see us again soon.
No doom and gloom.
And Alex Armstrong, always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to see what negative ions there are out there and if you should go dancing and singing in it with Alex.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There will be some dry weather around today, but also a swathe of rain pushing its way northwards. And this morning we do have some outbreaks of showery rain across parts of Scotland with a bit of sleet or snow over the higher ground. The brightest weather this morning will be across parts of northern England, the Midlands and into East Anglia. But here it is going to turn cloudier as we go through the day, with a bit of rain pushing in as this swathe of rain across southern parts gradually makes its way northwards as we go through the day. Also Also, some outbreaks of rain across parts of Northern Ireland, and temperatures for many of us will be around or a little bit below average for the time of year, especially across parts of Scotland. A bit of a chilly feel here. As we go through the end of the day, the wet weather across much of England will feed further northwards, so a pretty wet end to the day across northern England, and then a wet night for much of Scotland. And as that rain hits the high ground over the Highlands, the Grampians, we are likely to see some further hill snow. Something a bit clearer following in behind, so temperatures taking a bit of a dip, many places falling to low to mid single figures. But quite a few places waking up to a bright start on Wednesday, particularly across central parts of England. However, towards western areas, southwestern parts, here we will have some heavy blustery showers, could have a bit of thunder mixed in with these as they gradually make their way northeastwards. Temperatures again around average for the time of year, perhaps a little bit below, but it is going to be a touch milder than today for many of us, albeit quite blustery at times. Bye-bye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could win big. You could win an amazing £12,345 in tax-free cash that you could spend however you like. Plus, there's a further £500 of shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. We'll also give you a gadget package to use in your garden this spring. That includes a games console, a pizza oven and a portable smart speaker, so you can listen to GB News on the go. You have to hurry, as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Seriously couldn't get my head around it. Electric ambulances. The government are planning to spend our money, over £500 million, on a fleet of electric net zero ambulances. Even being told this alarm bell should be ringing, most of the people I know who have an EV have got rid of it because of range anxiety and the inconvenience, having simply just got too much for them. Frankly, they never do as much as they say they will anyway. First of all, they are totally impractical. The ambulances will take some 4 hours to charge each, so it will be out of action for that time. They will need space and individual chargers, and heaven forbid, they need to do more than the 70 to 80 miles capability, which will be somewhat diminished depending on weather conditions, and presumably the use of life-saving equipment to keep their patients alive, which I'm guessing will be powered by the same battery. Apparently, the NHS is committed to making all new emergency ambulances electric by 2030 and the entire fleet by 2045. In England alone, this would cost over £600 million. While electric cars don't produce any emissions from the tailpipe, there are emissions involved in the manufacture, as well as the production of the electricity used to charge them. So anyone driving an EV thinking what a great job they're doing needs to think again. Ambulances are usually changed every 5 years, and at about £150,000 per vehicle, the new EV version would need to be on the road for over 15 to make it commercially viable. So why should the public pay for this? In my view, it's commercially irresponsible and putting our lives at risk for the sake of an ever-questioning green agenda, which will bankrupt the country and is not in the best interests of the patients.
Good morning. It is 9 o'clock on the dot, and it is Tuesday, the 26th of March. You're very welcome to Breakfast with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Very good to have you on board. We're with you until just after 9:25. Ministers are poised to formally declare China a threat to Britain's national security. 2 individuals and 1 company face sanctions after the data of 40 million British voters was leaked.
Beijing blasted for spying on Brits. But is the UK response enough?
Well, critics include the former Conservative leader, Sir Ian Duncan Smith. He says the sanctions don't go far enough.
Whilst I welcome
these two sanctions from the government, it is a little bit, this statement, like an elephant giving birth to a mouse.
Earlier we spoke to former Liverpool MP, crossbencher peer Lord David Alton.
Duncan Smith has used this metaphor about the elephant giving birth to a mouse. Well, it's a bit like, if I can use a different metaphor, it's like closing the door once the horse has bolted.
We're also looking at this breaking story in the United States. A bridge in Baltimore has collapsed after it was hit by a cargo ship, an ongoing situation there.
And British comedian Sasha Baron Cohen is facing a backlash after the actress Rebel Wilson named him as the biggest, well, I'm not going to read that word, in Hollywood. More of that with Steph Takey shortly.
Morning. This week's unsettled theme continues today. Most of us will see some rain at some point. There will also be a bit of hill snow over the high ground of Scotland. I'll have more details shortly.
We want to take you to the live pictures and the shocking pictures of that bridge collapse in Baltimore. The fire department saying it is a mass casualty incident after the 1.6-mile stretch of the bridge collapsed into the water after a cargo ship crashed into it at around 1:35 local time. It's thought at least 7 people are in the water, and there is a search and rescue operation ongoing there.
We're going to bring you what we can on that in the next 20 minutes or so on the show. In politics, the Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowden has accused China of being responsible for 2 malicious cyber campaigns targeting voters, politicians and journalists.
We want now to be as open as possible with the House and with the British public, because part of our defence is calling out this behaviour. This is the latest in a clear pattern of hostile activity originating in China, including the targeting of democratic institutions and parliamentarians in the United Kingdom and beyond.
Well, Lord Cameron released a statement on X in relation to all of this last night.
Attacks on our democracy are unacceptable, yet that is what organisations backed by China have done. Today, we are publicly calling them out, and we've taken action. We've summoned the Chinese ambassador, and we are putting sanctions, travel bans, asset freezes on the individuals and the group responsible.
Well, let's speak to the Shadow Paymaster General, Jonathan Ashworth, and regular on the programme. Good morning to you. Travel bans, sanctions, does it go far enough?
Well, these are important announcements from the government. We will, in the Labour Party, always prioritise national security and prioritise our democratic integrity. So we support what the government has done. We do believe that we need to continue to keep all of these matters under review. In fact, if we were elected, we would do a full audit of all UK-China relations to fully understand our exposure to China and indeed give certainty to those businesses who trade with China. But we do support what the government announced yesterday, but we would continue to work on a cross-party basis with them to ensure that the right action is taken in response to any threat to our national security.
Of problems within the Labour Party around all this. You had a researcher, didn't you, that was accused of spying for China. I think that was back in September 2023. And you also had Barry Gardner accepting a huge loan from Chinese Communist Party, I think to the tune of £500,000. Are you sure that this sort of activity isn't happening in the Labour Party today?
Well, I might have misremembered the news report, but I thought there was a researcher who had an association with Conservative MPs. If I've misremembered that, I apologise, but that's what I thought. But obviously, look, if any instances or concerns around our national security are raised with us, we deal with it, because national security has to be an absolute priority, as does defending our democratic integrity. So, as I say, we welcome the action that was taken yesterday. We continue to believe these matters must be kept under review. We would do a full audit of UK-China relations should we get elected. And I think the position that the UK adopted, say, 10 years ago of announcing a new golden era of relations. I think that perhaps looks naive now in retrospect.
OK, what about the term epoch-defining challenge versus systemic threat? Does the Prime Minister need to strengthen his language in relation to China, or is this all about where it really hurts, you know, the economy and sanctions?
I think these things are all semantic in the end. Look, I'm not a diplomat. Our diplomatic service, our intelligence service, will make appropriate advice to the Prime Minister on what the right semantic language to use is. I wouldn't personally get too hung up on the language, but the key thing is that we are taking our cyber security seriously. We're taking our national security seriously. That's what we believe should be done. That's what a Labour government would do. And of course, all these things are always kept under review, and judgments are always made about what the right labelling is to use. But as I say, in the end, whatever the semantics of it, you've got to put your national security first.
It's not about semantics, Jonathan. It's about money, isn't it? You can't afford to tell them off. You can act sort of slightly, well, we agree with the government on this, and everybody's being very naughty about this, but are we going to do anything about it? No, you're not, they're not. Nobody's going to do anything about it. Why? Because you can't.
Well, it's certainly true that China invests a lot in our British economy, and particularly now over recent years, 20, 30, 40 years or so, we've let a lot of our industry go, haven't we? We don't have the manufacturing base that we used to have, which is why we're more exposed to global factors. That's why our energy bills have gone up so much, because we never invested in our own energy sources when we had the chance. It's why, if you think back to the pandemic, we've paid hand over fist, sometimes for PPE that was faulty, couldn't even be used because we didn't manufacture our own. Or
is that
charlatans came along and got contracts.
Can you actually reverse
I think
that?
you can start reversing it. I think you can actually, yes, and I think that's one of the things we're trying to do. We call it securonomics. We want to invest in our green energy infrastructure because we believe that not only brings down bills and creates good jobs, that's a security issue for the United Kingdom as well. We don't want to be completely reliant on whether it's Putin's Russia or the Middle Eastern countries when it comes to oil supply or decisions made by China. Now, you're always going to be part of the globe. You know, you can't get off the globe, obviously, but you can do more to support your own manufacturing, and that will mean bringing back good, well-paid jobs to parts of the country that have lost those good, well-paid jobs. Look, you know, communities like Bolsover, Mansfield, Wigan, Makerfield, Lee, used to power this country. Men used to go underground and work long hours in really hard labour and powered this country. But we've lost a lot of those. We've lost all of those types of jobs. Well, we need to be invested in the manufacturing of the future now and create good, well-paid jobs across every community.
Jonathan Ashworth, we spoke to the Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, this morning. She was addressing a crisis in special educational needs, announcing 6,000 new places. But she made the point to us this morning that at the moment the independent sector provides a decent proportion of special educational needs, and that she described this VAT tax that you'll be putting on private schools as pernicious, that will have a devastating impact on people with special educational needs.
Look, we've got to make tough choices. The public finances are shot to pieces, aren't they, after 14 years of the Tories? They made a real mess of the economy. And we've got to make some tough choices, and we are going to have to levy VAT on those private school fees in order to fund an expansion of mental health support and teaching support in schools for the 90-odd% of pupils who don't go to private schools. But the finances are a real mess under 14 years of the Tories, and it means that if we get elected, we are going to have to make tough decisions like that. But rather than learning the mistakes, the Tories are proposing a £46 billion bombshell, which will either mean more borrowing, pushing up mortgages, could mean cuts to the NHS, and actually threatens the future of the state pension as we know it. I hope Gillian Keegan's got some answers on that front.
Jonathan, if you were to win this upcoming election, if I was standing in your shoes and just listening to what you're saying about the state of the country and the options that are either open to us or not open to us, I'd be really depressed. I'm not sure I would want to be held accountable in a new government for mistakes, as you see it, of the previous government. Do you get depressed about that?
No, I'm eager to change this country. Look, after 14 years of the Tories, I think people have had enough of Rishi Sunak. They think he's weak and out of his depth. They've had enough of the Tories. This country wants change. There's a yearning for change. I see it in people's faces. I feel it in their handshake. And I am determined, and the Labour Party is determined to bring the change to this country, to fix our National Health Service, to bring back good, well-paid jobs across every corner of the country, to raise up living standards and to give our children the very best start in life.
Jonathan Ashworth, interesting talking to you today. Thank you for your views. Much appreciated. We've got to leave it there. Jonathan Ashworth from the Labour Party, thank you very much. If you've got a view on what he's had to say, we'd like to hear from you. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Let's get the latest on this developing story from Baltimore and Maryland in the United States, where a huge bridge has collapsed. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, has the latest for us. Quite frankly, stunning pictures, but this is a serious situation unfolding and a number of people in the water because there were cars on that bridge when it was struck.
Yeah, it's quite clear there is a terrible tragedy unfolding in Baltimore this morning. This incident happened at 1:30 in the morning. A huge container ship, the Singapore-registered Dali, was leaving the container port in Baltimore, heading out of Chesapeake Bay when it struck a central column off that bridge. And the pictures show quite clearly what happened then. The structural integrity of the whole of the bridge was compromised, and the whole of the bridge, it seems, just collapsed into the water. You have seen bridge collapses before where you might get a central span and vehicles on either side are okay, but this was the whole of that bridge. Now, it was 1:30 in the morning. It won't have been as busy as normal, but this is still a major highway up to Philadelphia, New York and New Jersey, so there will have been vehicles on there. We have reports from the emergency services that a number of vehicles have ended up in the water. It's been described by Baltimore Fire Department as a mass casualty event. In addition to those vehicles in the water, we're also told it was 7, but now up to 20 other people are in the water. We believe they were construction workers. Of course, these massive bridges, you quite often see construction workers on bridges overnight doing the maintenance work that they can't do when it's too busy during the day. So a number of construction workers who were on the bridge have also ended up in the water. We're told that the temperatures of the water, the Patapsco River at the moment, is 9 Celsius, so very cold indeed. It won't take long at all before hypothermia sets in, and this incident unfolded just over 2.5 hours ago. And of course, it's pitch black, cold water. It's going to be very difficult for those search and rescue teams who are there en masse now with specialist divers into the water and looking for survivors.
Mark, thank you. We'll leave it there. Very, very depressing news, startling pictures there. Not even a collapse, just a crumpling. Absolute
It's as if it's made out of Lego or paper or something rather than metal. Shocking. Let's get the latest. We've got Andrew and Bev in the studio with us, and they can tell us what's coming up in Britain's newsroom. That's the first time you've seen those pictures.
And we'll be keeping up to date on that, because that is an emerging story.
You're driving and you've just dropped the kids off at school and you're on your way. Get back and get the TV on to see the pictures of that, because it's 2.6 kilometres long, that bridge.
Imagine if that had been at rush hour.
It's a collapse.
I'd
imagine. In America.
You do wonder the conditions, how the pilot of that ship does not see what's in front of him unless there's some mechanical thing that goes wrong.
I know, but you still wouldn't have thought a bridge like that would collapse in the United States. If that had been somewhere perhaps in South America, you think perhaps it would have been jerry-built or something. I mean, it was
Baltimore.
Baltimore. I mean, extraordinary.
Yeah.
I bet you Trump will have something to say about that later.
I'm fascinated by Nadine Dorris today.
Glamorous at 66?
Yeah.
She looks pretty good.
She looks very good. I think she's a very attractive woman. And I think what I'm quite... Beverly, I think with this...
Revelation.
It's not a revelation. You know,
It's a revelation that you find her attractive. I didn't know that.
I think she's very attractive.
Do you?
Yes, I do. I think you're a very attractive woman.
Thanks.
Isabel, you're not bad. You're not bad.
I'm feeling rather left out here.
I think you're gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Tell me this. I think it's awful that people say, "Oh, she's 40 and she's attractive. You know, she's 50 and she's attractive. She's 60." I think that's the thing. I mean, just good luck to her. I mean, who do you find attractive at that age? I mean, there's so many. Like Joan Collins, who's in her
90.
Good mate of yours.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah.
When people say, "Oh, you know, you look good for your age.
Oh, it's a backhanded compliment, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's not nice.
Yeah. My other half always goes, you look good. Doesn't matter about your age. When I say, when he goes, you look great, I go, oh, I'm all right for my age.
James.
And he goes, don't say for your age.
So
and
is
that's
that
what,
gonna be a
that's what
positive
women have
thing
to
for
tell
women?
ourselves, don't we? We have to tell ourselves that.
And you think that's a positive thing then for women, her coming out and saying that?
I think probably, yeah, but it does draw attention to the fact that people do say, for your age, you look good for your age. You know, we're all healthy, that's what matters.
66, it's the new 46, isn't it?
Yeah.
It
Really?
is.
This Julian Assange verdict being handed down to the
10:30.
court today, that would be big in your show.
It will be.
What do you think is going to happen? Will he be able to appeal his extradition?
I don't think so.
He's goner.
I think, yeah. He can then go to the European Court, of course, if they're willing to hear it. But it's getting closer to extradition, I think.
Yeah.
And also, we're going to be talking to one of the Tory MPs who's been sanctioned by China. Pathetic, pitiful response from the Deputy Prime Minister and the Commons yesterday, wasn't it? This has been so terrible. Oh, we're sanctioning 2 officials and 1 company. Ridiculous. Hopeless.
Guys, thank you. Got to leave it there. We'll see you at 9:30. We'll see the Great British Giveaway competition and how you can enter right now.
It's the final week to see how you could win big. You could win an amazing £12,345 in tax-free cash that you could spend however you like. Plus, there's a further £500 of shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. We'll also give you a gadget package to use in your garden this spring. That includes a games console, a pizza oven and a portable smart speaker, so you can listen to GB News on the go. You have to hurry, as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GB-WIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Stay with us. Coming up, Steph Tetchy will be here. She'll be talking about Borat star Sasha Baron Cohen. Of course, he's British, but he's a bit of a PR nightmare. Find out all the details after this.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, what's going on in Scotland? So they're implementing these draconian hate speech laws, which are going to come into force on April the 1st, I kid you not.
Ironically, yeah.
And then, basically, you can go to your local mushroom shop or whatever.
Which I didn't know we had mushrooms farms in Scotland, because people aren't that keen on vegetables up the road. Not even a shiitake.
But you can report a hate crime at these private... But you can do it anonymously, and then the police will, I don't know, unleash the hate monster. I don't know how this works. What's going on?
I think the hate monster is mythical, and I don't think the hate monster actually exists. What I do think is existing... I'm genuinely really worried about comedy, right?
Yeah.
Now, believe it or not, some people in Scotland, they're wrong, but they don't like me.
Yeah.
And I genuinely feel that a lot of time is going to be wasted. You know, if someone calls you a name in a shop, you probably deserved it, believe me.
Also, comedy can be quite offensive, particularly yours.
And I'm not necessarily sure, as I've said on the show before, I remember my mum was worried when Scotland had decided that all residential properties needed special smoke alarms, and my mum was convinced this was to do with the hate crime and that there was a camera in them.
I don't think she's being that paranoid. I mean, Scotland is a kind of nanny state. You know, actually, Humza Yousaf, when he implemented the hate crime bill, put a subsection in that which said that they can criminalise you for things you've said in the privacy of your own home. home. Thankfully, Scotland doesn't have the largest arts festival in the world. Oh, wait, no, it does. It does. It actually does have that. And lots of comedians are up there. Now, we had this before, because if you go back about to 2003, when New Labour were trying to push through their racial and religious hate crime bill, the comedians are silent now. Something has completely changed. There's been a gear shift. I mean, in the Irish hate crime bill, which is going through at the moment, they actually define hatred as hatred.
Brilliant.
It's a complete circular definition.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And that tells me, when something's woolly, that tells me that it's not going to be applied fairly. It's going to be applied according to the person applying it.
Sasha Baron Cohen, the actor and comedian, he's defended himself after the Australian actress Rebel Wilson, spoke out about his bad behaviour. She's got a book coming out. She's writing about him. And Stephanie Tetchy, we're talking about the year is 2016. The film was called Grimsby. How is she describing her experience working with him?
She said he was outrageous, Eamonn. You know, what happens in showbiz, when people bring out their books, that's when it's like no hold bars.
He denies all of this,
He denies all the allegations, but, you know, from ages ago, about 10 years ago, she said that she'd done one sex scene with him, which she described as the most disgusting thing ever. She said that she felt a lot of pressure to do a nude scene, which she said no to. And what's coming out now, she says, chapter 23 specific in her book, he's already got his high-powered lawyers to come out to say, we do not want this included in the book. But Rebel yesterday named and shamed him and said she will be going ahead with everything she experienced with him.
What did you make, whether it's right or whether it's wrong? You're reading it and there's initial reaction from you and knowing reputations of him, of her, whatever, and what was his name? The one they all had.
Borat?
No, the Epstein, not Epstein.
The
producer.
Epstein. Harvey Weinstein.
And what we know goes on here.
Yeah.
What was your view looking at it all overall?
I'm not shocked, Eamonn, because I think, you know, we watch these movies and we see the finished project, but behind the scenes, there's always a lot of controversy that goes on that most industry insiders know about. And we only tend to find out about these things when people can put pen to paper and talk about their experiences. But there's always the critics who come out and say, why didn't you talk about it at the time?
But his lawyers banned her talking about it, and yet she is now
going ahead.
speaking out. So a lot of this info's not in the book, but she's now doing interviews about the book.
She has to, because she says she doesn't want to be silenced about this anymore. But the thing is now, Sasha Baron Cohen, his lawyers say they've got evidence, they've got videos, they've got witnesses who can disparage everything that she's saying.
Well, here's a question. Is this just the ultimate PR ploy for her book? I mean, it's got everyone talking.
I agree. I do think this is a big PR to help her sell the book. Because see it this way, Rebel Wilson, she is a funny character. People love her in Hollywood. But if there's a bit of scandal, people are now going to be interested to see what chapter 23 of the book has to say about Sasha Baron Cohen.
Well, what she's been saying in her interviews, I can't read out.
No, you can't.
Anyway.
You can't, but I feel sorry for him, because in the sense is once these things come out, it's hard to sweep it under the carpet.
And he does play a controversial role in a lot of his films. It's not exactly a cuddly, cosy character, is it? It's kind of a nuisance.
She should have known that this was going to come out.
Difficult one.
OK, Stephanie Tetchy, thank you very much indeed. Lovely talking to you. We've had a good morning. Hope you have had a good morning. Back in the morning from
6 o'clock.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There will be some dry weather around today, but also a swathe of rain pushing its way northwards. And this morning we do have some outbreaks of showery rain across parts of Scotland with a bit of sleet or snow over the higher ground. The brightest weather this morning will be across parts of northern England, the Midlands and into East Anglia. But here it is going to turn cloudier as we go through the day, with a bit of rain pushing in as this swathe of rain across southern parts gradually makes its way northwards as we go through the day. Also Also some outbreaks of rain across parts of Northern Ireland, and temperatures for many of us will be around or a little bit below average for the time of year, especially across parts of Scotland. A bit of a chilly feel here. As we go through the end of the day, the wet weather across much of England will feed further northwards, so a pretty wet end to the day across northern England, and then a wet night for much of Scotland. And as that rain hits the high ground over the Highlands, the Grampians, we are likely to see some further hill snow. Something a bit clearer following in behind, so temperatures taking a bit of a dip, many places falling to low to mid single figures. But quite a few places waking up to a bright start on Wednesday, particularly across central parts of England. However, towards western areas, southwestern parts, here we will have some heavy blustery showers, could have a bit of thunder mixed in with these as they gradually make their way northeastwards. Temperatures again around average for the time of year, perhaps a little bit below, but it is going to be a touch milder than today for many of us, albeit quite blustery at times. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.